The meeting of the Arizona Board of Regents was called to order on Wednesday afternoon before convening an executive session. Today's public meeting is scheduled to end at 5:10 p.m. We do have a full schedule, so we will be mindful of our time. And Regent Conyer, could I please have you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So we have a busy agenda today, including the University of Arizona's fiscal year 2023 State of the University Address, a discussion on civil discourse, the appointment of Regents professors for Arizona State University, and an exciting update on the Regents grants that offers groundbreaking research opportunities for our universities and the state. Each of these items are representative of the theme of this board meeting, which is leading for tomorrow. Arizona State University, Northern Arizona University, and the University of Arizona are leading for a brighter future, creating greater opportunities for students to better themselves, researchers to unlock discoveries that improve our world, and our state to grow and prosper because of these and the thousands of other interactions that happen daily on our campuses. Today, we'll hear from President Robbins on the extraordinary work that positions the University of Arizona as a leader in solving state and national challenges. The shared challenges we face as a state may have never been greater, but so too is our mutual capacity to tackle them, thanks to university research funded via the Research Regents grants, and the state's Technology and Research Innovation Fund, otherwise known as TRIF. All Arizonans benefit from this vital work conducted by our universities. With challenges in Arizona, such as air quality issues and forever chemicals affecting our water supplies, Arizona's public universities are leading the way to solve these issues with revolutionary research and innovation, all of which would not be possible without extraordinary leadership. The Regents grants are reflective of our commitment to solve these grand challenges for our state. Arizona's public universities were founded in the spirit of leading and creating a brighter future, and I am proud of our universities, from our presidents and staff to the faculty and students, for the leadership to ensure a strong future for our students and for our state. I'd like to pause now to recognize one of the great minds and leaders at the University of Arizona, Dr. Thomas Meixner, who recently lost his life in a senseless act of violence. Dr. Meixner was a visionary leader in the area of water resources who positively influenced many students and colleagues. On behalf of the board, we send our deepest sympathy to all members of the University of Arizona community. Our hope is for healing with time and remembrance of Professor Meixner, his devotion to students, and his impact in hydrology. We ask that you join us in a moment of silence. Thank you. I do look forward to the important discussions today we have scheduled. I'd also like to welcome Bradley Kendricks, ABOR's new Vice President of Finance and Administration, and Katcher Baden, ABOR's new Associate Vice President for State Relations, to their first full board meetings. President Robbins, thank you and your staff for hosting this meeting. Our first item on the agenda is the call to the audience. If you have any materials for the Regents, please give them to our board secretary, Suzanne Templin, sitting at the table to my left, and she will distribute them to the Regents. Pursuant to board policy, time has been set aside for this call to the audience. This is an opportunity for individuals to address the entire board in a public setting, to express their views or concerns regarding matters of board governance. The board reserves the right to limit the number of presenters on any particular one topic. Regents do not respond to comments made during call to the audience. However, we do hear your remarks, and we ask the appropriate person to follow up and provide us with information on any issues raised. When you're called to speak, please proceed to the lectern. To keep us on schedule, each speaker has no more than 3 minutes. As a courtesy to each speaker, Suzanne will hold up a sign signaling how much time the speaker has remaining. At the end of your 3 minutes, we ask that you conclude your remarks. Suzanne.
Thank you, Chair Manson. Our first speaker is Patrick Robles, followed by Kate Ellis.
Good afternoon, Regents, University administration, President Robbins, and members of the University of Arizona community who are present this afternoon. My name is Patrick Robles, and I have the distinct honor of serving as student body president for the University of Arizona. Welcome to Tucson and our beautiful university. I'm a product of Tucson Public Schools and a first-generation college student. I come to you today with two concerns. Prior to the school year, we saw the Supreme Court release their decision on the Dobbs decision, and abortion rights were rolled back. And here in Arizona, abortion rights continue to be in legal limbo. While abortion rights continue to be in legal limbo, student groups such as FORCE, Feminists Organized to Resist Creative Power, that's what the abbreviation stands for, has been serving throughout this reproductive health care void, right? We're providing Plan B, we're providing safe sex resources and feminine hygiene products, no questions asked, for free. Now, we've distributed twice the amount of products as compared to this time around because of the Dobbs decision. That's the analysis that was conducted by the student leaders within this program. Now, I understand that there are limitations that ABOR has to deal with when it comes to making a stance on such social issues. But I believe that this issue of abortion rights and reproductive health care should not be an issue that ABOR is limited to making a public stance on. We would love to see more support from the governing body that makes decisions that impacts all three in-state universities in efforts conducted by students to fill the void that has been left by the Supreme Court's decision to roll back abortion rights. Secondly, tuition reform has been a topic of conversation in my meetings with executive administration and, of course, with folks within the administration of at ABOR in Phoenix. It is of my opinion that student leaders need more further clarification as to what exactly tuition reform is. And in discussions with my constituents, we're hoping that an increase in tuition is not disguised as tuition reform. Tuition is already very expensive, and we look forward to continuing to be involved in these conversations to ensure that we can provide equitable access to higher education in our very great state. Thank you very much.
Next speaker is Kate Ellis, followed by Lauren White.
Good afternoon, Regents. My name is Kate Ellis. I'm the president of the Faculty Senate at Northern Arizona University. On behalf of the faculty at NAU, thank you for this opportunity to hear our comments. We wish to affirm our commitment to the education of all students in Arizona so that they become engaged citizens in a global world, confident in their ability to understand the issues they face, think critically about information available in the news and online, and promote civil discussion with others who do and do not share their points of view about the topics of the day, be they political, social, or religious. We faculty believe it is an essential responsibility of higher education to challenge our students to study the world around them and the multiplicity of people they will encounter in both their professional and private lives. Individuals from different cultures, ethnicities, abilities, political views, religious affiliations, and sexual preferences and identities. Students must recognize the interconnected nature of all aspects of humanity. A civil society requires a broadly educated citizenry who is willing to listen with an open mind and to learn, who questions with respect, speaks with consideration, and reaches out to lift others up rather than suppress either ideas or people. We are gratified by your ongoing commitment to NAU students and all the students of Arizona, and your trust in the faculty's knowledge and expertise in delivering content, critical skills, and tools for the informed discourse Arizonans expect. NAU faculty are encouraged by our ongoing partnerships with the regents to provide meaningful education for today's Arizona students who will become tomorrow's global leaders. Thank you.
Lauren White, followed by Sedona Hittinger.
Good afternoon, Regents. My name is Lauren White, and I am currently serving as the Student Body Administrative Vice President for the University of Arizona. Today, I would like to speak about the importance of continuing to support basic needs within all 3 college campuses. In 2020, one student region worked to create ABOR working groups on each campus to conduct research on basic needs and security in our campuses. Prior to receiving support, ABOR requested data to know the number of students affected by basic needs and security, and to better understand how it was affecting student retention. At the University of Arizona, our Basic Needs Coalition has spent a lot of time, directed by you all, conducting thorough research in order to create the Student, Food, Housing, and Insecurity Report published in 2021. Since this report was released, we have not seen any action or updates on how ABOR intends to offer further support to these 3 institutions. On December 2nd, we here at University of Arizona are hosting the first Student Basic Needs Symposium. This symposium will provide an opportunity to share our recent research, institutional insights, and connect with experts, staff, and community service providers. Experts from this topic in the UC system will be in attendance at the symposium. In their own college campuses, they have already successfully advocated for and reallocated funding to support basic needs programs utilizing their government representatives and Board of Regents. Learning more about how they were able to accomplish this is crucial in guiding your decisions surrounding basic needs. All of you were invited to this symposium, but so far we've only received RSVPs from 1 regent and 1 student regent. You all are the ones who make these critical decisions for all of us. Your presence at this event will speak volumes about your own individual passions for supporting us on these important topics. Registration closes tomorrow, but we strongly encourage you to consider your attendance to this event to further support the work that you as regents ask us to complete. In addition, as a student executive, I ask that you as a board determine and release a 5-year plan for how ABOR will follow up to the 2021 report and allocate resources to our 3 campuses. As institutions, we have held up our end of the ask. Today, we ask you to be accountable for your part and support our efforts. I hope you can find the time to attend and engage in these discussions, as it will lead to the betterment of all of us students. Thank you for your time.
Sedona Hittinger, followed by Liam O'Connor.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Sedona Heidinger. I'm a PhD student and the Administrative Vice President of the Graduate and Professional Student Council here at U of A. While my colleagues and I represent the 10,000 graduate and professional students at U of A, we are here to address an issue that affects all Arizona graduate students. Our graduate assistantship stipends, which are supposed to cover living expenses while we earn our degrees and perform significant work for the universities, are increasingly insufficient. Much of our advocacy this year stems from the 2021 Financial Stress Report created by the Graduate College last September. This report strongly conveyed the message that across the university, graduate students are suffering, and we're suffering more than our colleagues at peer institutions. The Council of Graduate Schools reported that over 70% of students could come up with $1,000 in the event of an emergency. Here at U of A, as of last September, only 55% of us could. 82% of us were highly stressed about our financial situation. 66% worried about being able to pay our monthly expenses. 52% of us had to forego necessary medical care. One anonymous respondent wrote, quote, "The most challenging part about being a graduate student is the precarity of my situation, where semester to semester, there's the constant stress and scramble of finding work. In the end, we have to expend so much energy on trying to financially survive that it takes away from our ability to study and advance our careers as scholars," end quote. The survey led to this fall's minimum mandated stipend of $20,000 for a 0.5 or half-time graduate assistantship, which will modestly increase next fall, although not every college has risen to this minimum yet. Over the last few weeks, we've distributed our own survey to see how our constituents are faring with the new stipend. 1,700 respondents and counting are reporting that their financial situations have worsened. While in 2021, 55% of us could come up with $1,000 for an emergency, now only 35% of us can. Where 52% had to forego medical care, now 63% of us have. Nearly half of our respondents have to depend on food pantries to meet our basic needs. As one anonymous student reported, quote, "The expectation that we make enough money to survive as grad students is abysmal. I don't know a single person who hasn't taken out loans or isn't one paycheck away from severe financial hardship," end quote. MIT estimates that $32,000 is the minimum cost of living here in Tucson. For Phoenix, it's $36,000, and for Flagstaff, it's $38,000. None of the minimum guaranteed stipends for graduate students are within $10,000 of the regional cost of living in Arizona State universities. We in GPSC are eager to continue the conversation with administration and you as our Board of Regents as we figure out how grad students at U of A, ASU, and NAU can meet our basic needs as we fulfill the missions and values of our universities. Thank you.
Liam O'Connor, followed by Brandon Neff.
May it please the board. My name is Liam O'Connor, and I represent the 800 graduate students of the College of Science here on the University of Arizona's Graduate and Professional Student Council. In recent months, I've been holding town halls at which I listen to graduate students' concerns. One issue that has been repeatedly raised is the inadequate coverage of the Arizona Board of Regents Student Health Insurance Plan. Graduate students serving as teaching or research assistants are automatically enrolled in this plan free of charge. But they say that the coverage is not enough, and its deductibles can be unaffordable on their meager stipends. In a survey on financial stress published last year, half of graduate students here reported that they forego medical care because of its expense. Graduate students frequently come to the university with spouses and children. The student health insurance plan does not offer options to cover dependents. International students especially are in a difficult position. The rules of their visas force them to choose between bringing their family abroad to the United States, where they will not have work or insurance, or leaving them in their home country. The student health insurance plan does not offer dental insurance either. While it has an option to pay for a dental discount plan, its benefits are too unaffordable beyond routine cleanings. As one student wrote in the financial stress survey released last year, quote, "I'm 34 years old and I can't even afford to go to the dentist to get 2 crowns for the root canals I had done 4 months ago. Tough times," unquote. The cost of 2 crowns on the student dental discount plan is $1,600 on a guaranteed minimum stipend of $20,000. For comparison, they would cost $900 on the University of Arizona's employee dental insurance plan. A student in the survey quipped, quote, "Teeth are luxury bones we can't afford to have." In a follow-up study conducted this fall, 2/3 of graduate students tell us that they forego dental care due to its cost. Because the dental discount program is insufficient, graduate students often visit dentists in Mexico. Dental insurance with dependent coverage was offered only several years ago, but it was discontinued in the fall of 2020. In the coming weeks, GPSC will be engaging with the health insurance carrier renewal process. The Board of Regents will have the final word in approving the plan. When this year's student health insurance plan comes before the Board of Regents, we hope that you will pay special attention to whether health, dental, and dependent care are sufficient for graduate students. Thank you for your time and your consideration.
Brandon Neff, followed by Brendan Trutchell.
Good afternoon, board. My name is Brandon. I'm a PhD student in computer science, and I'm the assembly chair of the Graduate Professional Student Council here at the University of Arizona. I want to start my remarks by putting the amount that graduate students are paying in fees into context for y'all. So for domestic students, they're paying about just over $1,600, about 8% of their stipend back to the university. International students are paying more than $2,000 every year, right back to the university. What that means for a graduate student is that every semester in the fall and the spring, that first paycheck they get, the one that's supposed to go towards rent and food, it's just going straight back into the university's pocket. I want to put that in context for y'all, for members of the board, for everyone here. Imagine if your employer sent you a bill for 10% of your income every year. What is that? $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 more? What impact is that going to have on your finances? For graduate students, it regularly means that we are skipping meals, we're leaving bills unpaid, and it can even lead to eviction. And as you've heard here and across the country, students are getting fed up with universities that aren't treating them with dignity. At many schools, students have been left with no other option but to go on strike. All the things that graduate students do, teaching, grading, researching, all of that stops. Last month, students at Clark University won raises up to 90% after their strike. And just this week, almost 50,000 workers in the UC system in California, mostly graduate students, walked off the job just weeks before finals. Let me be clear. It's in your best interest to meet the needs of graduate students. You have an opportunity here to be a thought leader in the region and in the country by meeting graduate student needs. You have three needs that my colleagues have started on mentioning. The first is that these poverty stipends need to end. We need to be able to afford the basic means of living so we can do our work effectively. This means more funding for teaching assistants and additional funding to support research assistants who are working on external grants. We need comprehensive health insurance, including dental and vision insurance, and we need to be able to cover our family members, our children, and our spouses. And finally, we need more funding for mental health care on campus. We need those mental health services on all three campuses to be free at the point of service, and we need this by the fall of 2023. Thank you for your time.
Our final speaker, Brandon Trachsel.
Good afternoon, Regents. My name is Brendan Traxel, and it is my privilege to serve as the student body president with the Associated Students of Northern Arizona. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to speak today. Before I begin, I want to thank Executive Director John Arnold for meeting with the student body presidents of the three universities on November 4th. The communication and discussions were greatly appreciated. The first time I spoke to the board in June, I laid down some of ASNU's priorities for the academic year. I'm proud to say that since then, great progress has been made on many fronts. Compensation for student workers has been a primary concern of students for many years. Last week, President Cruz Rivera announced the implementation of all compensation recommendations from the University Budget Advisory Board. One of these recommendations was an increase in the lowest paid wage for student workers and the re-implementation of the tiered pay structure to adequately reflect the work that students do. I want to thank President Cruz Rivera for investing in the people that make NAU great. Just under 2 weeks ago, the Lumberjack Care Center had its grand opening. The center consolidates and expands resources available to students, staff, and faculty in need. This is essential as we fight food insecurity among our lumberjack community and address the common overlaps of needs in those situations. ASNU's Menstrual Equity Initiative has made excellent progress as well. Our pilot program of 75 free menstrual product dispensers across campus will soon be 80 as more building managers buy in. I believe that this is the most significant student-led initiative at NAU today, with immense impacts for years to come. After receiving feedback from the student body's diabetic community, ASNAU will soon be investing in Sharps disposal containers in our Central and South Union restrooms so students can stay healthy and present throughout their day. Finally, I want to share that one of our senators recently passed a resolution recommending a formal student bereavement policy at NAU. Currently, NAU has no clear guidelines on how faculty are expected to support students who have lost a loved one. Considering that between 22 and 30% of college students have lost a family member or friend within the last 12 months, this is needed. ASNAU looks forward to working with the university to implement such a policy. With all that's happening, I am perpetually excited for the new NAU. Alongside President Cruz Rivera's two major announcements this week, I fully believe that significant progress is being made toward more equitable and accessible post-secondary education. I look forward to doing all that I can to continue to contribute to these efforts. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Chair Manson.
Thank you, Suzanne. Thank you, everybody, for your comments. We appreciate them greatly. The next item on our agenda is the approval of the consent agenda. And that is items 9 through 29. Does anybody have a conflict with any of the items scheduled for consent? Seeing none, I move that the board approve items 9 through 29 as listed on the consent agenda. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion does carry. Thank you. So our first item will focus on the University of Arizona, and President Robbins and his team are going to provide the fiscal year 2023 state of the university. President Robbins, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Manson.
There you go.
I'm going to start with our land acknowledgement. We respectfully acknowledge the University of Arizona is on the land and territories of indigenous peoples. Today, Arizona is home to 22 federally recognized tribes, with Tucson being the home to the O'odham and the Yaqui. Committed to diversity and inclusion, the university strives to build sustainable relationships with sovereign Native nations and indigenous communities through educational offerings, partnerships, and community service. Despite the fact that this campus and our campus family has been through a lot of challenges and difficulties in the past several weeks to months, I'm here to report on some of the highlights and positive things that have gone on at the university. This first slide just illustrates that we're one of about a dozen universities in the U.S. that has a large student enrollment and in the top 20 for research. You see the other 10 universities that are in this category. So I think we're fulfilling our land grant mission of education of students both from Arizona and the nation, as well as discovery in our research activities. These are just some of the highlights of rankings that programs have. With number 7 in our bachelor's online program, I think we're right behind ASU in this ranking. So the universities in Arizona are doing a fine job in educating people through an online portal. We are ranked in the top 50 in public universities in the U.S. at number 48. And we have the number 8 best online MBA program as rated by U.S. News and World Report. Our hydrology water resources program is ranked 6th globally by the Shanghai ranking. And astronomy is always at the top of U.S. institutions through NSF rankings. I think Johns Hopkins is somewhat of a distant second, and Caltech even further third. Our photography program in the Center for Creative Photography, it's one of my favorite cups, is ranked number 3 in U.S. News and World Report. And our legendary MIS program at Eller ranked number 1 by U.S. News. Number 2 in geology, number 3 in cybersecurity, coming out of our campus in Sierra Vista. And our pharmacy program is ranked number 5. We had a large gift that provided many endowed chairs for supporting the College of Pharmacy, and we're getting back to where we want to be, which is a top pharmacy school in the nation. We've had incredible new leaders that have been recruited. I'm particularly thankful to Provost Folks for leading the searches and landing these 3 incredible new deans. Dr. Cannon came from Purdue University as the new dean of Eller. Dr. Poloni Staudinger came from NAU. Sorry, Jose Luis. She is a remarkable leader, new dean for the College of Social and Behavioral Sciences. And Dr. Robert Berry is the new dean of education, came from the University of Virginia. We've enrolled the largest class we've ever, first-year class we've ever enrolled at 9,000. including transfers. This is an increase of 5% over fall of 21 and a 16% increase in fall of 20. It's the most academically prepared class in the university's history, and I've got another slide toward the end about that. I think you've seen a lot of spectacular images from the James Webb Telescope, which was launched last December, and the first pictures began to come back in the summer. We had 37 of university researchers on this James Webb team. Marcia and George Reiki have instruments on there. The near infrared camera is Marcia Reiki's and the mid infrared is George's. And we just had a presentation at a retreat in LA over the weekend. We also beat UCLA over the weekend. I just throw that in. But it's just remarkable to me. George has been at this institution for 52 years and Marcia almost 50 years. And they are absolutely national treasures. And to hear them talk about the James Webb and the 2 decades of planning and the science that went into this remarkable instrument that's out in space. We have the Giant Magellan Telescope that's going to be land-based if we can raise the money, which is in the several billions. And that's a collaboration amongst many universities. But we're incredibly proud of the work that our astronomy and lunar and planetary sciences professors and teams do at the university. The health sciences, we grew by 25% from FY20 to 22 in terms of research funding, from $222 million to almost $300 million. That's a 93% increase from when I arrived in 2016. We're at 153 million, so we've almost doubled. And I think one of my first meetings, Regent Penley and Regent Manson, I said that was a goal, that we needed to double our health sciences funding. So we did that. There's still a lot of growth and a lot of activity, and I think we're going to continue to grow research expenditures in the health sciences. We're going to have to do that if we're going to meet our $1 billion goal of annual research expenditures. If you haven't been over to our museum, the woman Okra was returned. For those of you who don't know the story, there's a great film that's associated with this incredible tale of how this painting, this de Kooning painting, was stolen from our art museum the day after Thanksgiving in 1985 and was returned. Chief Seastone, who was the police chief here for years, was the investigating officer, and he was able to accept the painting back when the FBI called and said, we found the painting in a house in Silver City, New Mexico. It's a great movie. You can't make this stuff up. It went back to, it was, as you can imagine, they stole it, rolled it up, nailed it on a board and put it on the back door of their bedroom, of their bathroom wall, so they could look at it every day. They were artists and they just enjoyed de Kooning's painting. So I say it was on loan to them for 37 years. When it was returned, it needed to be restored, and we were selected by the Getty Museum. It took 2 years to restore this painting, and if you haven't seen it, it's spectacular. And by the way, the Getty did that for free. So we were incredibly appreciative of that. Linda McCartney is an incredibly accomplished photographer. Her collection, there's an exhibit that'll be here starting in February the 25th. Will run through August at the Center for Creative Photography. And, you know, they're clearly, she attended the University of Arizona for a couple of years and then began taking photographs. She learned photography here, and she was just a world-renowned photographer. And there will be an exhibit here. Our hope is that we will get her entire archive to be located at the Center for Creative Photography. So in the spring, we can all go over and see that collection. Our cancer center, this is a big deal. We're only one of 53 comprehensive cancer centers in the United States, and you have to compete for reaccreditation every 5 years. And I'm happy to report that we received an outstanding score. I think the highest score we've ever gotten by the National Cancer Institute on our comprehensive cancer center renewal. We're the only comprehensive cancer center in Arizona, and particularly focused on health disparities and cancer programs in our native lands. I also wanted to highlight, it's not on this slide, but that Dr. Jeff Burgess from our College of Public Health received a $4 million Regents grant to study in collaboration with ASU and the Arizona Fire Chiefs Association, 1,500 firefighters in Arizona. And Chair Manson mentioned this in her opening remarks with PFAS chemicals or forever chemicals that are found in burning buildings, homes, in the foam that firefighters use, and even in their in the protective shielding inside the suits that they wear. So this is we're very appreciative of this grant, $4 million from the Regents, and look forward to getting the results from Professor Burgess. These are 4 outstanding faculty members who've won phenomenal awards just in the last few months. Jessica Tierney won an Allen T. Waterman Award, which is a young career award from the National Science Foundation. It's the highest award that a young investigator can receive. Dr. Tierney received $1 million award, and I'm told this is a precursor to a Nobel Prize. So we're very proud of the work she's done. Kim, her area, she's the first climatologist to win this award. It was started in 1975, and the first U of A person to win it. Kim Ogden is the chair of chemical engineering here at the U of A, and she was just awarded a $35 million USDA award for sustainable rubber. This is in conjunction with work with Bridgestone, with the have to read this Waioli plant that is in the desert of Arizona that can grow with little water, and that plant is going to be used as to make rubber products. So Kim is as a seasoned investigator, has work in algae and other things, but this is a big award and should make a big difference and be climate friendly rubber that can be produced. Jennifer Carlson got a MacArthur Fellowship, a so-called Genius Award, and Danny Delagostina is Popular Science is one of Popular Science's 10 most brilliant scientists in the country. She worked with I think started as a graduate student with Dante Loretta on OSIRIS-REx, and she will be leading the continuation of OSIRIS-REx, even though it touched down and it got the sample from the asteroid and then dropped it. I thought that the thing was going to land back in the desert in Utah. It's actually being dropped in the spacecraft is going to continue on, and the name of the program is Apophis, which Danny is going to now use that spacecraft to look at other asteroids. So going back to our class, you can see from fall of 20 to fall of 22, we increased the number of students by up to 56% that have a 3.75 or higher grade point average, more than 1,000 4.0s. In the top 10 percentile of the graduating class, almost half. It's the most ethnically diverse class that we've ever had, certainly the largest. And we're very proud of our first year retention rate, 85.6, on our way to 90, hopefully. That's another one of the goals that I outlined in my first presentation. So we're not there yet, but we're very proud of the progress that's being made. And this just shows the number of students continuing to increase from over the last 10 years, from about 40,000 now to over 50,000. Graduate students are somewhat flat, and my hope, and I know Provost Folks' vision and is to grow the number of graduate students, and obviously I'm very supportive of that as we move forward. The increase in the number of students, particularly the out-of-state students, since 2019, we've had a tremendous growth in the number of out-of-state students. And we think that it's in part of the success of the Wonder Makes Us campaign. The marketing team, along with Casey Yakirtis and her enrollment team, have been working, looking at specific zip codes to target around the country. We've had certainly large numbers of students coming from not only our traditional spots of California, New York, Illinois, but now a larger number coming from Texas. And the number of incremental enrollees over this time period has increased by 1,350. So this is a platform that is targeted, like I said, by zip code, but electronically, and it's allowed the team to tell compelling stories, feature students and faculty members in what makes the U of A special. In terms of research expenditures, we have an announcement coming out soon that will detail our HERD funding. We're on our way to being at around $800 million with a goal, of course, of getting to that magic $1 billion annually in funding. And I know ASU is right there with us, and I think there are 19 universities in the country that have achieved this $1 billion of funding, and to have 2 of them in Arizona would be very special, and I think would be an incredible milestone for all of us. I was just going to make a comment about one of the key areas in the strategic plan that we presented now 5 years ago. I guess it was 4 years ago. Research is a big part. Obviously, astronomy, planetary sciences is a big part of what we hope to do. Health sciences as well. And we talked about early on in our strategic plan about, if you look back at the last 25 years in human health, I think one of the biggest advances was mapping the human genome. As I look out in the next 25 years, I think it's better understanding and mapping the human immunome. There are 4 areas that I think are going to be really important. Those are cancer biology and immunotherapies for cancer, inflammation, which is really responsible for almost all cardiovascular disease and many of the degenerative neuro diseases such as dementia and Alzheimer's disease. The third area is autoimmunity and transplant biology. And the fourth one is an obvious, a better understanding of our immune system in fighting infectious diseases, just like COVID-19 that we've been through recently. So this is a building that will, in a center that will sit in the Phoenix Biomedical Core. We see it as a collaborative building with ASU, NAU, TGen, all of the hospital systems, Banner, Common Spirit, Mayo, Honor Health, the VA, Phoenix Children's, and that this will have significant economic impact, because we're hoping that companies, whether they are drug discovery companies, drug manufacturing companies, or medical device, or even digital health companies, will be drawn to a center like this. And we're very excited about the future of CAMI. I'm going to close with athletics to say that we had 10 teams that had a perfect NCAA academic progress rate score, meaning that they continued in school and had a minimum passing grade point average at 2.5 or more. And that is the same that we had back in 2020. So we're incredibly proud of the progress that we've made going forward. Our 6-year graduation rate for athletes is 87%. And that's something that I know that Dave Hickey and all of us at the U of A are incredibly proud of. We're going to go into the public phase of our campaign next October. This just shows the amount of money that we've raised over the past several years. We had a dip there in 2020 down to 250 million. Our goal for this year is 350 million. I think we will meet and exceed that, but we're going to have to ramp it up to near 400 million for the next few years to meet this $3.5 billion goal that we have for our campaign. So I'm going to close with a video and then answer any questions you may have. So this video is Wonder, and it'll be part of one of the videos that we'll use in our campaign. I think it's a 30-second shot that is appearing in football games.
And no one can take it away. And I wonder if you know what it means to find your dreams come true.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Any questions?
Questions or comments from the board? Say.
Sure, I'll go first. Terrific job, exciting, always to get these. You mentioned a couple of the aspirational things that you're looking forward to doing, and I'd like you to expand on those. So we talked about $1 billion research. Obviously, you guys, your whole team has been laser focused on that. The DC Center, I think, is driving a lot of that. And on task, you mentioned 90% retention objective. What are some of the others that are top of mind that we'll be talking about 2 or 3 years from now?
Well, getting the endowment to 2 billion, that's always been on the original list. It's going to be tough to get the retention rate to 90%. I mean, we're working hard to accomplish that. And I think, you know, my hope is as we go over for the reception tonight in the old Bear Down Gym, which has been converted to a student success district, you'll see firsthand sort of a one-stop shop for student support. And of the nearly 100 initiatives in our strategic plan, over half of them were student success focused. And we're committed to that. And we know we've got to double and triple down on that to achieve the not only retention rate, but the graduation rates that we aspire to. Certainly the research funding, you know, we're on our way, but that's another tough grind. You've got to recruit, you know, that's why I'm so excited about new deans coming who recruit new faculty members. And that's how we get research dollars, that faculty members sit down and do the incredibly difficult job of writing research proposals. And oftentimes it's about a 10 to 15% hit rate on getting funded. But if you do, like some of the things Kim Ogden, you know, she's probably been working on that for years and years. And to get a big award like that is really incredible. So, you know, there's so much that got left on the cutting room floor here. And, you know, it's just the tip of the iceberg. But, you know, I didn't talk about quantum networking and the work that's going on there and the big award from NSF. I think that's going to be really great. I saw Sally earlier and we were chatting about the work that Dr. Cantwell and Dr. Mortensen are doing with ASU around quantum. So there's a lot of collaboration that goes on professor to professor. And so we're very fortunate to be here to have that kind of activity. And it allows us to attract talented individuals to come to help us achieve that goal. So those are some of the major things. I'm sure I'm forgetting something.
Thanks.
So would like to make a couple of overall comments, but I want to talk first about and to give the audience some kind of perspective on retention and graduation rates, because a 0.1 increase in either of those numbers is very, very significant. It's a large challenge. And so I think to give the audience some kind of perspective on what it takes to make that kind of change when you have a class of 9,000, 0.1% is still a big number.
It is. And we went up a little, went down a little, but now we seem to be on a good trajectory. I certainly, just like I wouldn't say to Dr. Cantwell, I promise you in the next 5 years, we'll get to $1 billion. I won't say, but I promise you we'll get to 90%, but that's what we're working toward. That's our aspirational stretch goal.
And 90% is in the realm of private universities that accept only A students, and 90% is a high rate across the country. So some perspective on the numbers is always helpful.
Yeah, and ASU is they continue to be ahead of us, so we keep trying to catch them.
It's always good to have a little friendly
Yes.
competition. Lots and lots and lots of great progress in this. Everything from the rankings. I think sometimes we don't realize how good some of the individual programs are at our universities. And so being able to call those out in these kinds of environments is hugely helpful. Lots of top 10 programs in the country at this school, something to be extraordinarily proud of. Research increases, obviously the faculty awards says a lot about the quality of your faculty. And that is a draw for other faculty. It's a draw for students.
It is.
I think those are great things to point out. The student success and retention, improvements are also very difficult, and well done on those. I think, CAMI is relatively new. We talked about it for a while, but the funding that just came from the governor's office is hugely important in establishing our ability to do that. You still have a fundraising target on that to get there, but certainly by the governor's funding and the initial private investment that you have, it cracks the door open for others to understand what you're doing. And I think there's a tremendous opportunity for a hugely positive impact on knowledge generation and treatment protocols and those types of developments that are beneficial not only to the state of Arizona but to the world and at writ large. So
Right.
I really appreciate the work that you're doing there.
And it'll help. I mean, we'll have to Steve Bowler and Mike Dake have done a great job in Phoenix in socializing this. There's a great advisory committee. We're hoping for some funding from the city of Phoenix and the supervisors in Maricopa County. We're gonna have to bond a little bit of it, and then it'll be one of the big targets for the campaign. And I think having that funding, people want to invest and support winners.
Mhm.
So we're incredibly fortunate that the governor chose this project.
Other comments from the Regents? Thank you.
Thank
I'm
you.
very impressed and very encouraged. So we are running a little bit early, so I am simply going to keep moving. And for the next item on the agenda is the presentation from the National Institute for Civil Discourse. And Regent Duval, can you introduce this item?
I can, and I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, I am. This, we have incredible gems all over these universities, which don't get much attention. One of our predecessors, Fred Boyce, made a habit every week of randomly picking a department and going and spending an hour and just, what are you doing here? Because these success stories and exciting things are happening all over the place, and we just don't have time, bandwidth to discuss them all. And the conversation we're about to have is one of those gems. And I specifically imposed that we do this now because I thought that following a difficult, divisive election season, that a little dose of optimism and kumbaya might not be a bad thing, and that's what we're bringing to you today. NICD starts with a tragic story. 11 years ago, as everyone knows, Gabby Giffords was shot in the head at a Safeway 4 miles north of here. And I was chairing her campaign. She frequently talked about how brutal and violent sounding a lot of the language was at community events. And those of you who knew her, I mean, she just was a big-hearted, open-minded, collaborative person. And she would so often say, if there's anything I could do, I would want to devote my life to lowering the temperature of our political discourse. And then this tragedy happened. And as a Tucsonan, my first thought was, this is a Dallas moment for Tucson. I mean, Tucson will now forever be known as the place where Gabby Giffords was shot. And so I thought, God, is there something we can do positive about this? And so had this idea and took it up with Provost Hay and President Shelton. And a couple of days after the shooting, Mark was in a position to respond, and he said, yeah, I'm all in. And we started making phone calls and had this incredible response, which Keith will describe. Immediately, people who said, I want to be a part of this: Condi Rice, Bill Clinton, George Bush, Alan Simpson, Ken Duberstein, Madeleine Albright, Bill Richardson, Dan Glickman, Katie Couric, Greta Van Susteren. It goes on. You can see it on the webpage. A national outpouring that this moment had sort of captured, like, can't we do something to try and change the downward trajectory of our politics? We quickly put $2 million together and started hiring staff and started building this out. Keith is the second executive director and is exactly the right guy at the right time, a former professor at both Columbia and Harvard on conflict resolution. He started something in Idaho where he himself had been a gubernatorial candidate, started the Common Interest, which was a bit of a beta test of this idea. And it took the Common Interest to national scale before we then had an opportunity to make a transition and found our way to Keith, and who can now describe this program. So by way of introduction, look, this isn't going to address all the root causes of our political polarization. I'm not naive. But, when you're in turbulent water, everybody's got to grab whatever oar they can. And this is our oar to do what we can. It is a pleasure in that context to introduce our Executive Director of NIDC, Keith Allred.
Thank you, Regent Duval, and thank you, the rest of the Board of Regents, for having me today. It's been a real credit to the University of Arizona and to Regent Duval's vision that 11 years ago, we recognized the need for us to address the bitter partisanship in our day. It turns out to have been really important that the University of Arizona got started that long ago. None of us knew just how bad it was going to get over the course of time. So it's been a real honor to lead that important mission here. It's been a privilege for me. I also want to say to have gotten to know many of you on the Board of Regents by virtue of being a judge at the Regents Cup. And I just want to compliment you on the outstanding program that is, and what a compelling and highly visual way of demonstrating how important it is that we engage differences constructively. So thank you for the contribution you're making there. So in that similar vein, as Regent Duval has suggested, I'd like to give you some updates of some achievements we've also been having at a national level through the National Institute for Civil Discourse. As you would expect from an elite research institution like the University of Arizona, we have found significant insights into how to have a practical impact by really mining what formal research has to tell us about polarization in America today. So if you don't mind, as Regent Duval said, I'm a former academic, a recovering academic, but I relapse on occasion. And so I'm going to relapse with you here for a second and just show you a little bit of what we know about polarization in the country today for the purpose of showing you how we're having significant practical impacts. So we need to draw several distinctions to really understand our bitter partisanship in 2022. The first distinction that's important to draw is between issues and social polarization. So issues polarization is what you might imagine how far apart the average Republican and Democrat are on discrete policy issues. The other kind of polarization then is social, or sometimes called affective polarization, which is how much animosity or anger we feel towards the other side. So then if we also draw distinctions about who we're talking about in terms of polarization, we distinguish between political leaders and citizens. And then within citizens, between those who are politically active and everybody else, and that's the politically active, depending on how you define it, or maybe 10 to 30% of the population, and then everybody else. If you draw those distinctions and you look at those 6 cells, what we find from the research is that polarization in America is at the highest ever recorded and rising fairly rapidly, actually, with one really critical exception. And that is issues polarization among everyday Americans. And the research there shows that we are not nearly as polarized as we think we are. In fact, the research shows that we are half as polarized across the Republican Democratic divide as most everyday Republicans and Democrats themselves think. Nevertheless, we're still angry at each other, even though we agree on a lot. And of course, part of the problem is we don't recognize just how much we agree on it. That suggests a practical insight into, as Regent Duval was saying, you know, where are there some oars that we could pull on that might really have an impact? And so this suggests that there is maybe the possibility of mobilizing everyday Americans around finding solutions that are wise enough to attract bipartisan support. And that might be much easier to do than one would think. A second important thing to notice about polarization today that we know from research is that as deeply divided as we are in many ways, we are also evenly divided at historic levels. That has been true for about 20 or 30 years. And as you all know, November 8th really punctuated that point. You really cannot slice the Congress any more evenly than the American electorate has sliced it. And that creates a little bit of a window of opportunity. That suggests that those members of Congress who are interested in reaching across the aisle, it doesn't take that many of them. It's actually a fairly small number who can swing things in the American Congress. So that makes it a little bit more tractable than it may appear at first glance. Drawing on those 2 insights of low issues polarization among everyday Americans and how evenly divided Congress is, we thought we saw a path by which we could significantly boost Congress's capacity to engage differences constructively, to find solutions that are wise enough to attract support across our divides. And I have to tell you, I'm a little bit shocked at just how successful we have been. This program is now about 3.5 years old. We have worked on 3 issues in that time. The first one was surprise medical billing. The second one, which passed in 2020. The second one was physical infrastructure that passed last year in 2021. And this year we're working on the Electoral Count Act updates, which is looking poised to pass Congress during the lame duck. That would make us 3 for 3 in passing acts of Congress, which just feels extraordinarily stunning to me. So I want to take you through a little bit of how we do that. And Regent Duval and I thought it would be nice to bring some of that august board into the room and members of Congress to let them speak to the kind of influence the Common Sense American has had. So I'm going to share with you a video. The American people will be our saving grace. NICD's Common Sense American program organizes citizens into a potent force that identifies and champions solutions wise enough to attract support across our divisions.
Our members are 29,000 strong and growing rapidly. They come from across the country and political spectrum. Each has committed 90 minutes per year to reviewing their issue briefs and then sharing their views with Congress.
It's already working. The first issue we took on was surprise medical billing. Our more than 1,500 unique member emails and 150 congressional briefings played an important role in passing legislation that ended the practice. One of the keys to our success is the distinguished advisory board that opens doors for our members so that they can be heard.
They introduced us to Senator Bill Cassidy.
I am so thankful for Common Sense Americans' work to help tackle surprise medical billing and get our legislation that bans the practice signed into law.
It's been gratifying to introduce members of Congress to Common Sense America. For example, I sent an email introducing Senator Patty Murray to our work on surprise billing That led to important meetings with senior staff on the Senate Health Committee.
It was impressive how well-informed members of Common Sense American were about surprise medical billing. The way they shared those informed opinions was very helpful in passing pragmatic legislation.
I was struck by how excited the Problem Solvers Caucus was about the support Common Sense American can provide when Christy Todd Whitman, Keith Allred, and I met with them recently.
I've experienced firsthand how powerful it is when the board opens these doors. Most recently, I saw it with Senator Susan Collins. Her appreciation for the support that we can provide for common sense infrastructure solutions was obvious in a meeting that we helped arrange.
Imagine 500,000 Americans championing solutions that represent the broader electorate. We hope you'll join us and support our work to bring everyday Americans common sense to Washington. Thank you. So since we produced that video about a year ago, Common Sense Americans' size and reputation and impact have continued to grow. So I want to update you on what we've been doing in 2021 and the growth we've had. So I'm going to share with you the homepage of our Common Sense American program here, if we can pull that up on the screen. I think in the video it said 38,000 members or along those lines. We are now at over 53,000 members, and it is a group that is balanced politically, left, right, and center. It's also a group that is balanced geographically with over 100 members from every state in the country. Currently, we're at 1,422 in Arizona. This year, after the infrastructure work that we did last year, this year our members chose updates to the Electoral Count Act as the most meaningful issue that would be ripe for bipartisan action. So the Electoral Count Act is the critical piece of legislation that most of us didn't know anything about until recent years, but is what governs how states certify presidential election results to Congress, and then how Congress counts those counts those votes. So our members chose that as there was a significant bipartisan effort underway to update that Electoral Count Act. And that means that we developed a thorough policy brief on the question. So this is what our members review. They commit to spending an hour or more per year reviewing the issue that they choose. And so this is what that brief looks like that they reviewed this year, and it introduces those. We were grateful to get expedited special funding from the Hewlett Foundation, because members of Congress were actually reaching out to the Hewlett Foundation saying how important it would be for us to work on this issue. And so we got 30 of the most impressive election experts in the country working on this, and from a broad ideological range, left and right, that helped us develop the brief to make sure we represented the competing perspectives effectively. The heart of the brief then goes into the various proposals under active consideration in the Congress. This was before any legislation had been formally introduced, but it was under active consideration and discussion. So we introduce the Electoral Count Act and how it works. And then the critical part is that we brief each of the proposals under active consideration. And crucially, we make the strongest case for and against each proposal. So we don't put our thumb on the scales. Our effort is to provide good, balanced information for Americans to form their own opinion. And so, drawing on these experts from across the ideological spectrum, we make the strongest case for and against each proposal. So our members spend an hour or more per year reviewing that brief this year on the Electoral Count Act. So I'll show you how the results look, and these are the results that we then share with members of Congress. We've done over 50 briefings with members of Congress so far on these results. And just to give you a little bit of a feel for this. So for example, one of the proposals that is now included in both House and Senate legislation along these lines is to clarify the vice president's role as purely ministerial in the counting of the electoral votes. So we show 89% support for that, and that is strong majorities of Republicans, Democrats, and independents. A very interesting finding that's a bit of an insight into that research that I shared with you before is this year we also ask our members not only Do you support or oppose clarifying that the vice president's role is purely ministerial? What percentage of Democratic members of Common Sense American do you think will support this? What percentage of Republican members of Common Sense American do you think will support it? And as we knew from research would be the case, each party dramatically underestimates the amount of support that the other party has. It turns out they violently agree with each other on this, but they have no idea that they do until you do this kind of work. We briefed the other major aspects of the legislation that was being considered, and you can see some of those findings again and again. You see broad bipartisan support across the board for this. This year, we were excited that we were able to create data dashboards so members of Congress and the public can go directly into the back end of our findings and slice and dice it a little deeper. So this is broken down by party, and I've sorted it here for members of Common Sense American from Arizona. And so you can see that we see a very similar kind of results in Arizona as we saw across the country. But this turns out to be especially important when we're briefing members of Congress. They're obviously interested in, well, what do people from my state think? This work has gotten even more attention this year than our work in the previous 2 years. So for example, the Los Angeles Times wrote a major article on our findings in late September. This was several days before the critical Senate Rules Committee hearing on the act, and was seen as being a very important kind of precursor to that hearing. After this came out, Senator Collins, legislative director, emailed me and said, wow, this is really good information and spectacular timing because the crucial Senate Rules Committee hearing was just coming up. She said, we're sending this to all of the staff on the bipartisan group of 16 senators that negotiated this legislation, to all of our press contacts, and posting it on our website. Senator Sinema's legislative director emailed us after this and said, and thanks for all the help shaping this legislation. Turns out we had come out with our results before any formal legislation had been introduced, and to a striking degree, where they came down on some of the open questions were in strong alignment with where these thousands of Americans came out. Had the privilege of attending that Senate Rules Committee hearing and witnessing a 14-1 vote in favor of it, including support from Senator McConnell and Senator Schumer, listening to the debate where you could hardly tell the party of the members of the committee debating. I had to look around and say, are we really in 2022 in the United States Senate? There was remarkable agreement around that. And that at that hearing is where it became clear, particularly with Senator McConnell and Senator Schumer's support, that it was likely that this would in fact pass this year. In the wake of that hearing and recognizing the kind of important input we'd had, Senator Manchin's legislative director emailed me and said, thanks for your tireless work on this. I don't think there's any way this legislation would have come this far without your help. So Congress is now poised during the lame duck. Lame ducks are always challenging. So, it's not a slam dunk yet, but it looks likely that Congress will pass legislation updating the Electoral Count Act in the lame duck session. And in doing so has the opportunity to fortify peaceful transitions of power in the American democracy for generations to come. Those members of Congress that have been most deeply involved in that work give significant credit to the role we could play convening tens of thousands of Americans from across the country, showing where there were options and solutions wise enough to attract broad bipartisan support. I can't think of anything that is more worthwhile to do. I feel like I've had a blessed career, but I've never gotten up in the morning so energized to do the work of the day as doing this. And that is in significant part due to the vision of Regent Duvall, of Gabby Giffords, the Board of Regents, and the University of Arizona, and recognizing how crucial it is in our country that we are able to engage our differences more constructively. And those are the kinds of impact that we're able to have in building the nation's capacity to do that. Thank you. It's been a pleasure to be with you today.
Great. Thank you, Keith. And before turning to the chair, I would just say, let's just draw attention to this. There is no system in the United States that has every university with a green fire rating. There is no university system in the United States with a Regents Cup. There is no university in the United States with a National Institute of Civil Discourse. So at a time when folks are questioning whether or not universities are places where we celebrate free speech, differences of opinion, and civil discourse, I hold us up as the national model. Keith, thank you.
Very true.
Any comments or questions? Regent Penland?
Keith, it's good to see you. As we were saying before this meeting, Keith and I were both judges at the Regents Cup in the final round. And as Keith, you were saying, the students are indeed impressive. Indeed. I just want to thank you for bringing attention to the level of agreement that we have in America on so many issues. The Center for the Future of Arizona, which is an important center here in our state, has completed a Gallup Arizona poll and a voters poll just prior to the election. And not so shockingly, based on the data you presented, over 80% of Arizonans of both parties, well, 80% total, slightly different among the parties, agree on the need for immigration reform, the importance of education in the economy and in economic development, the need to have healthcare access without financial harm, and I could go on and on. But what the center has done for Arizona is to demonstrate through two very different polls exactly the point that you're making. As Americans on issues, we agree.
Absolutely.
Any other questions or comments? So I have two questions. If somebody wanted to become involved in Common Sense American, how do they do that?
Man, I love that question. Thank you. All you have to do is go to commonsenseamerican.org. That is the website that I had up before. So commonsenseamerican.org. That's American with an N. Encourage everybody to go and join immediately because this is really an opportunity to have your voice heard in the American Congress in ways that may really surprise you.
Thank you. And for somebody who's been as politically distanced as she possibly could for most of her life, this is fascinating to me. So I really appreciate the work that you're doing. My second question is, given that this is a University of Arizona entity, have we done any of this kind of work in Arizona? So has your organization done work in Arizona? Because I think the difference, the Center for the Future of Arizona has done the polls, but the difference is that your organization actually takes a specific topic or legislative event and does the pros and cons and options, which perhaps is really helpful to legislators as they try and figure out how to move something through the process. So I would like to be a little bit selfish and have some of that expertise happen in our state.
I will tell you, Regent Duvall is smiling because he's had this conversation with me a few times and it continues.
Set me up for this.
We are doing some important work in Arizona, specifically beyond Common Sense American. I think our second most important program that has the most impact is called the Next Generation Program, where we work with entire state legislatures and conduct workshops on how to engage differences constructively. To this point, we have worked with 18 state legislatures and over, I think we're coming up on 2,000 legislators that we've worked with. We had done a little bit prior to my time as executive director. We've done a little bit with the Arizona legislature, but we'll, be engaging there again and, offering to do the kind of workshops we do. I'll just mention a little bit about that work a little bit more. In one of the workshops we put on, at the end of the workshop, they build a kind of action plan for how could we build our legislature's capacity to engage our differences more constructively. And there are really cool things that come out of this. So for example, we worked with the legislature in Maine, and one of the important things that came out of their action plan was a change in the seating chart so that they sit Republican, Democrat, Republican, Democrat. And as one Maine legislator told me, it's much easier to work across the aisle when there is no aisle. And so, they come from the weekend, and they're sharing pictures of what's going on with their grandkids and they engage each other as full human beings by doing that. So that's been also a very powerful program there. And we would like to focus again on Arizona. Regent Duvall certainly encouraged me to do that. And there are some ongoing conversations about how we can do that. Let me also, if I might, just mention in that next generation work is also really gaining traction and accelerating in just the last 6 months. Both the State Legislative Leaders Foundation, which is the major association of speakers of the House and Senate presidents around the country, and the National Conference of State Legislatures have asked us to grow existing partnerships we had with them, because they both were saying, you know, that the challenge of bitter partisanship is becoming the fundamental challenge for our associations, which are inherently bipartisan, and for our members to fulfill their jobs as leaders, and threatening our democratic institutions. So each of these organizations said, we feel like we really need to emphasize this more. We're not sure we have the capacity to do that alone. Can we partner with you to do that? So in April, the State Legislative Leaders Foundation announced, and we announced that partnership at their major national meeting in DC, where there were about 60 state legislative leaders from across the country. And NICD put on 4 of the sessions at that meeting. They were the highest rated sessions that they have ever had. In December, I will be making similar presentations at the leaders session of the National Council of State Legislatures in New York City. And from those, which was part of our intent, when we do those sessions, we say, and these are the sessions and the programming we can bring to your state legislature. So it's a phenomenal marketing tool. And just since those partnerships have been announced, we now have on the books over just the next 2 months, we will do the state of Idaho and the state of Delaware. Coming up shortly after that will be Michigan, and we're in discussion. Well, as of actually yesterday, it looks like in 2 weeks, we'll be doing the Kentucky legislature. I got a call from the majority leader just yesterday on that. So that work is really taking off. And I think as we really round out our state legislature work, there will be an opportunity to do that in Arizona.
So I guess if I could do anything, I would encourage us to look at, you know, you have a Common Sense American. I would really love to see a Common Sense Arizona.
Yeah. Well, thank you for suggesting that. As Regent Duvall introduced, I piloted this idea in the Idaho legislature. So it started out at the state level. I know it can work well. I will confess that we feel like we're stretched fairly thin with our resources right now. So we would love to raise the resources to be able to do a Common Sense in Arizona. And absolutely.
What are your sources of resources?
Yeah, we're about 25% support from the University of Arizona, and that comes in a couple of important ways. You might have noticed that really cool backdrop at the beginning of the video. That some of you, I think most of you have been to the new DC Center, the University of Arizona's new DC Center. So that's in the convening space. That is not, we didn't go rent that or a green screen. That is actually the University of Arizona's DC Center. There is not better space, I think, in DC for doing that. And so we are housed at the University of Arizona's DC Center. And so that, you know, is a significant portion of what would otherwise take up our budget for rent in DC for spectacular, not only our offices, but really incredible convening space. For example, I think I can pull this up pretty quickly. I just want to show this to you on our we've got a picture here. This picture here is in the convening space when we announced our results, and these are 3 of the leading experts on the Electoral Count Act in the country. And so we announced our results at a major event in the DC Center. So the University of Arizona's vision, and I think this was President Robbins' vision foremost, to say, hey, the University of Arizona has things to contribute in the nation's capital. We need a space that is equal to those contributions that we can make. That National Institute for Civil Discourse just benefits enormously from that. So there are other sources of support constituting about 25% of our budget from the University of Arizona. About 50% of our budget comes from foundations. The lead of those are the Hewlett Foundation, the Rodell Foundation, Don Budinger and folks that many of you know, the American Arbitration Association, and we're in other foundations over time. And then the balance, another 25% or so from individual donations.
Perfect. Any other questions or comments from the board? Thank you. This was fascinating. I don't know that any of us had a real sense for what was going on, at the national level through U of A. So
thank you.
Appreciate it, Keith. Thank you very much. Our next item on the agenda is the discussion and consideration of legislation affecting the university enterprise. And so I'd ask Paige Gonzalez and Catcher Baden to discuss our legislative affairs portion of the agenda for the 2023 legislative session. And Catcher, it's nice to meet you. Welcome.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. What a great segue to our presentation here today. Chair Manson, Regents, Presidents, we're here to present ideas for legislative proposals for the 56th Legislature First Regular Session beginning January 9th, 2023. And I appreciate your kind introduction of Catcher. He is our new AVP for State Relations, and he comes to us from the State Board of Education. And prior to that, he was a Senate staffer. So he brings a lot of knowledge and good connections to us, and we appreciate that he's joined our team. So I'm going to provide you a brief overview of what the legislature looks like at this point. Some of these numbers will sound familiar to you. The Senate is right now at 16-14, 16 Republicans, 14 Democrats. Senate leadership is Warren Peterson, Senator Warren Peterson, he's the president, and Raquel Tehran, Senator Raquel Tehran is the minority leader. The House split is 31-29, 31 Republicans, 29 Democrats. And Speaker Toma, is the speaker, just elected 2 days ago, and Minority Leader Cano, he was elected as well.
Say that name again.
Cano. We also have Senate committees were announced. We don't have House committees yet, so as soon as we get those, we'll send those to you. The three committees I know you're always particularly interested in, Senator-elect Kavanaugh will be heading the Appropriations Committee. Senator-elect Bennett will head the Education Committee, and Senator Shope will head the Health and Human Services Committee. It's important to note that 40% of our legislators are freshmen this session. So that will be an opportunity and interesting for all of us. Also, last month on budget, JLBC estimated for the fiscal year that they will soon be budgeting 140 million ongoing and a one-time balance of 2.5 billion. So they consider to caveat all these discussions about continuing to be conservative with forecasts. I'm going to hand it over to Catcher to cover a few legislative proposals, and then I'll wrap it up at the end.
Thank you, Paige, and good afternoon, Madam Chair and Regents. As Paige mentioned, I'm going to run through the first three proposals on the handout that was provided to you. I'm not going to go into any great detail on them, but of course, I'm happy to if you'd like. And of course, I'm also happy to answer any questions as we move through here. To lead off, we have a pretty straightforward proposal regarding the Spouses of Military Veterans Scholarship. It's a scholarship that was passed in this last year's budget and was a priority of Governor Ducey. The legislature appropriated $10 million to fund last dollar scholarships to the spouses of veterans to attend a community college or university. A question that has been raised as we've been implementing this is whether or not that scholarship extends to the surviving spouses of those veterans. So this proposal is to simply ensure that those surviving spouses are also eligible for the scholarship. So like I mentioned, pretty straightforward on the first proposal. And I should also mention on this proposal and the next one that I'm going to talk about, ABOR will be leading those efforts. So we will be securing a sponsor and shepherding it through the process. So that second proposal is a report streamline bill. ABOR is, as many of you know, subject to over 24 reporting requirements. And so that means somewhat periodically, ABOR will seek some legislation to clean that up or streamline it. And that's what you have in front of you today. We have attempted to prioritize while also balancing what's possible at the legislature. So you see there's 4 changes to reports. There, 2 of them being eliminated, 1 of them being moved back 30 days, and 1 of them just being modified. And then finally, for me, anyways, is something that may sound familiar to you, the optional retirement program. This is a bill that ASU will be leading, and they led last year and had Mr. Peterson sponsor a bill for them, as a matter of fact. And this bill will allow all university employees to have the ability to participate in the optional retirement program instead of the state retirement system. Currently, that option is only extended to what essentially amounts to the employees at the top of the organizational charts at the universities. And this is really a recruitment and retention issue for our universities. The optional retirement program has a lower employee contribution rate than the state retirement system. And so certainly for lower salaries, those even just 0.1% make a big difference on whether or not they take that job or stay in that job. So that's it for me. I'll hand it back to Paige.
The last 2 that I'll present are more of a supporting role that we would be playing. You all remember last year there was a bill that had to deal with university police department funding. It was amending the Smart and Safe Fund distribution to include universities and a few other law enforcement entities. And it made it all the way to the end. At the very end, it did require a 3/4 vote, and we were 1 vote shy. And so we would just like the ability to continue to pursue that. Whether we lead it or whether we work with our partners and we work together on it, there might be an opportunity to do that. And lastly, nursing programs. There were, as you all know, there were 5 nursing programs that were proposed last year and passed. And there might be chances to, optimize, do return on investment, kind of streamline or provide more flexibility. So we'd like the ability to be able to support those efforts. So let's see. Well, I guess you have NEI next on deck, I'm sure, from the universities, but it's also important to know your government affairs team will obviously prioritize budget priorities as we are directed. That will, in addition to all the things that we just described there. So we're happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the board? Okay. Seeing none, I am going to move that the board support the 2022 legislative agenda as discussed. Do I have a second? Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion does carry. So thank you both. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
And as we move into the upcoming legislative session, I would like to ask that each university present an overview of their new economy initiative. And so we're going to start with U of A and then NAU and finally ASU.
So I'll begin with one, then I'll hand it off to Dr. Cantwell, and then Provost Folks will finish this out. So there are 3 items. One is UAHS support for medical school growth. Then there'll be RII request, and then a request for the College of Science that Provost Folks will present. So we will be requesting $63 million for ongoing support to increase the size of both of our medical school classes in Tucson and Phoenix. The goal would be to double the number of students graduating from our medical schools over the next 5 years. So it's essentially 250 additional students, 50 a year over 5 years, 25 at each school. And the resources, obviously, we estimated that it costs about $300,000 per student to educate per year. A lot of that is front end loaded on basic science courses and labs and things like that. Because we've already got 2 medical schools running with 120 in each class at each location, we think that we can do this expansion for less than the 300,000 per student. And additionally, in this money, we would fund an integrated biospecimen banking consortium that uses all tissue, blood, other fluids in a barcoded, organized manner between both the Phoenix Medical School and the Tucson Medical School. So that's where that request is. And do you want to take questions at the end or individually?
Let's go ahead and take them at the end.
Okay. Dr. Cantwell.
Notes, guys.
So on the research, when we say RII, we're really talking about research and innovation since it's a common portfolio. As you know, we've been talking about growing our research rankings to $1 billion in research revenue. And we're really focused on intentionally focusing that growth in the context of the land grant mission. So these requests include ongoing funds that augment and or accelerate capacities that we're already developing to really drive that into research growth that's more associated with the land grant mission. $2 million for the Institute for the Future of Data and Computing. You've been introduced to that idea. Hopefully someday you'll meet Dr. McCabe, who leads that institution. $5 million for the Applied Research Building. So that building is scheduled to open in the spring of 2023. We would like to augment its capacity so that, as an example, the CubeSat development or the the advanced manufacturing development that goes on there is really focused on the needs of the state of Arizona. $2.5 million for the Grand Challenges Research Building. You'll recall that building has in it a large component of growth in the optical sciences, as well as the actual physical location for the Institute for the Future of Data and Computing, as well as some new, the Space 4 Institute, which is focused on space defense. Each of those brings with it some capacity. We would like to augment that capacity so the research dollars that we go after can lean in to the needs of the state of Arizona. $1 million for something called the New Frontiers of Sound. Acoustics is the next manufacturing frontier, frankly, particularly at the very, very small scale. We're very good at that. We have built some capacity to do advanced manufacturing using acoustics, as well as develop other kinds of technology for defense needs. We would really like to give that team the ongoing capacity to have some capability to seed fund and bring in faculty around how that can build into the economy of the state of Arizona, both on the defense side as well as on the advanced manufacturing side. $1.5 million for the Mission Integration Lab. This is a laboratory that's a building that's been built at the bridges for the sort of smaller portion of the tech park that's 2 miles south of this campus. If you ever drove south on Campbell and as it became Keno for about 15 years, that was dirt. It's not dirt anymore. And and some amazing things are happening there. We're doing a lot of different kinds of development. This is a special purpose building, very special purpose to use and build stratospheric balloons. One of the things that stratospheric balloons can do with augmented funding is develop environmental sensors that can downward look at the state and with existing capacity and give us a lot more data about how we're doing either environmentally with water, et cetera. And the last is $2 million for water reuse and water resiliency and self-sufficiency. I think that's fairly self-explanatory, but it is to really augment an existing program in water resilience and water reuse
to focus very specifically on working with agencies in the state of Arizona.
Thank you.
And finally, we also seek to request NEI funding to make a move that is a little aligned with the efforts that we've been that are already underway to train doctors who are excited about and prepared for medical practice in remote and rural communities. We have an aligned problem with mental health practitioners, which are very few and far between in remote and rural communities. So we're seeking 1.7 million in ongoing funding to enable us to place in excess of 20 new clinical mental health care professionals into the state of Arizona each year. There's a multi-stage problem here in that we can only have our students, our trainees, be placed into clinical trainings with people who have PhDs in psychology. So we have to both build out a network of clinical placement sites in rural and community health centers that we can put students with. We literally don't have enough clinicians who are trained to train more people out there in the field. So we both need to grow capacity inside the university and to partner with other organizations to build capacity around the state to do this. But our goal is to be able to, within a few years, be able to place north of 20 new mental health care professionals out into rural and community healthcare centers around the state to meet what is already a dire need and projected to get worse. Happy to take any questions on that one as well.
So do I have any questions from the board? Regent Duvall?
I do, and I'm going to ask this of each of the three universities because it's just obviously timely. The water crisis facing Arizona is growing in complexity and speed. The governor has built architecture for policy development going forward and has resourced it. Can you all go first? I mean, each institution has water capacity. I think it's timely that all of us know what it is so that we can talk about it in the community. Can you describe sort of how we're engaging the public sector around water policy issues in the future of our state?
I assume you're focusing mostly on Arizona.
I am.
Yeah, so we do and have a long-standing history of policy work with the state agencies in Arizona. And I mean, I can go into some detail on that, but I would say perhaps to your question that it is such a moment that that really it would be very timely for the governor to call on the three universities, each of which has unique skill for not only serving for us, for serving and integrating and delivering policy solutions to Southern Arizona. Maricopa has its own set of urban challenges, and Northern Arizona, each is not totally unique, but somewhat unique, and we need to serve each of those communities. So on the policy side, we have great strength across three universities. On the technology development side, it's my biased opinion that technology needs to follow policy. So if we said we can do a fair amount of work in desalination, for instance, all of us have some capacity in that area. Ours is more on the membrane and chemical engineering side than on the developing large scale systems side. But should we be doing that yet? In an augmented sense, in other words, augmenting our asks and or the dollars that we're going after. We certainly joined forces, and this is on the energy side, but relevant to water, to go after the Department of Energy's hydrogen hub call. There will be similar large scale opportunities from the federal government, which will only be awarded to states that have a kind of get it together approach where there's state investment, all the universities are involved. They're really looking for the regional approach, as we've said before. We will see those in the next few years. And it isn't just Arizona that has massive and really impactful near-term water problems. Do you want me to go on? I mean, so you've got policy, you've got technology, you've got working with regional, even working with the tribes, each one of which has its unique regulatory approach to how they work with their own water issues inside. We just started the Center for Indigenous Resilience, which is pretty much 100% at this point focused on working with tribal entities around their water challenges. And that is case by case. It is tribe by tribe, nation by nation.
I have a additional comment. It's around conservation and it's around technology about how to grow food with less water. We talked about the rubber, from plants out in the desert that require a little water, but we're going to have to look for solutions to feed nearly 10 billion people quickly with less water. And I think Dr. Cantwell, all of what she said is correct, but specifically in Yuma, where there's been the flooding of fields to grow one head of lettuce, you can do it with agroponics or hydroponics. There's agrivoltaics where you can grow plants under solar panels to decrease the amount of water needed for those plants. So there are a lot of things that are going on that we can bring to bear on this issue.
Yeah, so I think what I was hoping for in an answer was kind of what are the strengths that we have at U of A, and so the same answer from NAU and ASU. What are the strengths that we have in our research arena relative to water? So the agricultural issues, the grow more with less. What other kinds of significant water expertise does U of A offer?
So we should, it's an interesting idea to actually begin to take the thousands of projects and bin them. I would say all of us, but we have a particular strength around arid region water matters, whether they are agricultural, whether they are in the plant sense, whether they are associated with cattle or sheep, whether they are associated with industrial processes, the wide variety of water related issues. And a lot of that work carries with it international partnerships in areas with the same problem. So just one example is the work that we do at the Arava Valley in Israel. And that's around the arid region agriculture. Israel happens to be very good at this, but they're not exactly the same as we are. So arid region water challenges, water policy in the context of the complications of both US and state law. And I think we all carry people who are really good and well known at that, but the capabilities at the University of Arizona are very well known nationally. So those are kind of policy, they're kind of politics, they're kind of unique to some of the situations we find ourselves in. And then finally, I would say on the water, I call it the technology side, but really the engineering side, whether it's engineered systems for the delivery of water or the use of water, or engineered systems for the reuse of water, or like an agrivoltaic system where the water perspective in a system like that is not the energy perspective, but how do we use systems like that to utilize yet less water in certain growing types of situations. So those are kind of if I just, bucketed it, I'd bin them into those three areas: technology, politics and policy, and arid region.
Perfect. That's how. Region Penland.
Thank you very much, Chair Manson. Dr. Cantwell, I recognize that we have the kind of technological capability that you've been describing. But we know across Arizona in the active management areas that we have, we've seen significant increased capacity with regard to water because of the restrictions and policies that are built into active management areas. Yet in 80% of Arizona's land, we have no active management areas or have not. And those are predominantly rural, desert, and agricultural. A great challenge that confronts us is for those individuals who are involved in those areas and live in those areas is the unknown. Were we to adopt policy like the active management areas have, what will happen to us? What will happen to our livelihood? to our children, our grandchildren, to the agriculture that we've depended on, for example. So how can we, and this is not a technological issue, how can we address those issues in a way to really expand what we already know in this state works? And what works is the policies associated with active management areas.
Yes. Two things.
Yeah,
Two things.
sorry,
come to mind.
Betsy.
Yes. And I am, no one of us as an individual is the person to answer that question. But I would bring Keith to the, if I were the empress for a day, I would bring Keith to the table and I would develop programs for each of our cooperative extension offices. I would run them at each office associated with how do we understand in that region, in that county, the problem and the impact.
Well,
Yes.
and because this is the land grant institution.
Yes.
You have that
do.
extension set of extension services that
That's
enable
right.
you to bring farmers, ranchers, and others in arid areas together and really discuss the impact
Absolutely.
of policy like active management policy. I mean, we've seen one semi-success in Southern Arizona in the most recent election and one failure. Yet Director Tom Bushatsky has been working with the Wilcox area for years and years to really bring about what we've just seen. So the challenge is not trivial, I recognize, but it seems to me the University of Arizona has perhaps even more capacity than some others in dealing with this. Although I thought President Crow wanted to say something about this, although I wasn't paying close attention.
I was just still on, I thought, what's the broader question by the chair as to the overall capability. So I'm ready to jump in whenever that's necessary.
Okay. Can I just add on to the previous answer that Dr. Cantwell gave about when you drive out of town on Speedway and you go north on I-10, there's the West Water Center on I-10. If you want to go visit and touch something and see something of what we're doing, that would be a good stop. There are many different brilliant scientists and professors there working, not the least of which is Ian Pepper that you've heard about with wastewater-based epidemiology around COVID and other pathogens. So that's one area that would point to that's a place you can go and see and feel and touch and understand the kind of projects that are going on there around algae and other things that I don't know as much about. And then, of course, the biosphere. There are all kinds of things going on at the biosphere that can help answer some of these big questions.
So President Crowe, I think I'm going to wait until we come back to ASU's presentation on this and then we have your moment. Any other questions for U of A from the board? On NEI? Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it. We'll move on to NAU.
Yes.
Sorry. Down to earth here. Thank you for the opportunity to share an update on NAU's New Economy Initiative portfolio. As you know, NAU has three key areas of investment within its NAU portfolio that align closely with the areas of need to support Arizona's new economy and NAU's intention to be an engine of opportunity, a vehicle of upward mobility, and a driver of impact. Each area of our NAU portfolio represents areas of high workforce demand. NAU's students will be prepared to contribute to the state's economic prosperity through our excellent baccalaureate and graduate level programs. The individual and collective economic benefits are tremendous and crucial for our state's continued competitiveness and well-being. NAU's investment portfolio
Areas include allied healthcare such as nursing, physical therapy, physician assistant, and occupational therapy, behavioral health such as clinical psychology, clinical mental health counseling, school psychology, and social work, forest health and land management such as forestry, fire ecology, ecological restoration, and law enforcement rangers. These complement other areas of distinctive excellence at NAU, including our College of Education, which is a leader in efforts to educate the next generation of teachers and school leaders in Arizona. Today, I'll briefly summarize how we've invested the NAU resources that have been invested in our university this past year, and how we will enhance the impact of our areas of focus for all Arizonans. And I'll provide a broad overview of our plans for NAU's fiscal year 24 request from the state. As I shared during the Allied Healthcare presentation to the board in May, NAU is pursuing ambitious plans to fully leverage the NEI investments to grow programs, expand avenues for access, and help meet the critical need for highly qualified allied healthcare professionals and behavioral health practitioners for our state. As was noted previously, we know that those are areas of dire need across the state. We are expanding programming strategically across statewide sites using multiple modalities with accelerated program options. We're building, as we spoke last May, on several years of growth in healthcare programs at NAU. Enrollments across programs have increased by more than 1,500 students per year since 2012. By 2027, as our current investments mature through site and program buildouts, including 9 program sites, we project growing enrollments by an additional 1,600 students per year. Among other things, we are also adding new programs and areas for physician assistants, a doctor in medical science, and similarly to University of Arizona, are looking at a certificate for rural healthcare practitioners. Importantly, our students are Arizona residents, about 75% of them, and Arizona serving. Many fields have more than 75% of their graduates who stay in Arizona post-graduation to practice. The imperative for these investments are clear. Arizona ranks near the bottom in the nation for healthcare providers in allied and behavioral health, and the economic benefit will be substantial. Nearly 20,000 jobs, 60 billion in labor income, and 130 billion in economic output. Expanding allied and behavioral health programs requires substantial upfront investments in personnel and facilities. The dividends are incalculable, especially when we think beyond the simple economic returns on investment to the public health and well-being of our state, where equitable and positive health outcomes will boost all fortunes. The other main area of NAU's NEI investment is one that has long been a cornerstone of NAU's distinctive excellence, forestry and land management. While the overall programmatic investment is smaller than for allied and behavioral health, the impact of NAU's contributions to this effective stewardship of our forests and public lands is tremendous. With increasing threats of forest fires, especially those catastrophic in scale, the workforce needs in this area are critical. Arizonans know well the impact of forest fires on individuals, communities, and our economy. In 2020, for instance, taking only the 3 largest wildfires in the state, nearly 400,000 acres burned and the cost of this damage was more than $86 million. NAU's top-ranked forestry school is helping to meet the essential and emerging needs we face for wildland fire managers, forest ecologists, and natural resource managers. NAU also provides specialized training for law enforcement rangers who are placed with public land agencies throughout the state and the region in support of land and resource management. This academic year, NAU admitted its largest cohort of new students to its core BS in forestry degree. Forestry is also planning to add a highly scalable fire-focused degree program in wildfire science to complement the generalist forestry degree. By fall 2025, these 2 bachelor's programs will nearly double capacity in undergraduate forestry degree programs. Enrollment in our professional Masters of Forestry program doubled this year, and the school plans to grow enrollment in its master's and doctoral programs by over 85% over the next 5 years. We will continue to incrementally increase capacity of core programs along with substantial increases in enrollment in our certification programs focused on fire ecology and resource management through our longstanding and close collaborations with land management agencies in the region. Looking ahead, NAU will continue to build capacity to grow impact in our key areas of focus. First, we will continue to invest in allied healthcare and behavioral healthcare programs. NAU is currently working with a one-time appropriation of $26 million, and this investment is being leveraged for our expansion of programs and collaborations in Yuma with Arizona Western College, programmatic operations, and crucial infrastructure projects. We also have a one-time appropriation of $10 million for 2023, 2024, and 2025. This investment will be used for programmatic expansion and build out across statewide locations. We'll be introducing new and expanded workforce aligned programs, expanding statewide infrastructure, and investing in technology infrastructure. Looking ahead, we will continue to keep health front and center of our NEI portfolio and ask the state for continued and sustained investment in this area. In synergy with our Center for Health Equity Research, which was recently awarded a $21 million grant to continue its work through the Southwest Health Equity Research Collaborative, we are making investments supporting translational and applied data science, public health, health economics, and management that expand our capacity to improve community health. Leveraging our assets in healthcare, health, and biomedical sciences and behavioral health, NAU is also exploring the development of a distinctive and accelerated community medicine program. Second, we will continue to focus on growing our forest and land management programs with significant focus on wildland fire management, which is among the greatest areas of need for our state. Third, we will diversify our NEI portfolio with a new focal area, building out workforce-oriented, industry-aligned programming at statewide sites to complement our attainment focus. This strategic investment in NAU's statewide programming, along with our differentiated admissions and pricing strategy, will broaden the opportunity of people in communities throughout Arizona to participate in the new dynamic economy that requires an educated workforce aligned with industry. Examples of projects underway include our expansion of NAU and our partnership with Arizona Western College, our collaborative efforts with Pima Community College to expand programming and develop tightly articulated pathways to higher educational attainment, investments in facilities and programming at our North Valley facility, and investments in our new facility, the lease for which you approved today in Mesa at Skybridge, with a focus on hotel and resource management. We will increase the impact of statewide programming by refreshing and shaping our program portfolio and design deliveries so that we are responsive to regional needs. This effort will be powered by partnerships with community colleges through the Arizona Attainment Alliance ecosystem, with potential to reach 322,000 students statewide. We endeavor to serve broader populations who will benefit from post-secondary education with the access first approach that NAU brings to Arizona and its higher education system. We thank the Regents for their continued support, and I'm happy to take any questions, as is Bjorn Plugstedt, our CFO and Senior Vice President. And we also have on Zoom our Vice President for Research, who can comment on the question that was raised about our capacity to address water issues in the state.
That is a
That
big
is a
thing.
NAU, and it has snowed up there, by the way, so.
Yeah, it's Casey's.
Yeah, I think opening day is
Opening day next week.
tomorrow. So any questions or comments from the board for NAU? Regent Penland?
Yes, Regent Penland.
Thanks, Provost Pugliese. I'm just really pleased to see you focusing on those areas of excellence of NAU, particularly the extensive capacity you have in allied health and also in forest management, which, back to the discussion we were having with the University of Arizona, is so critical for water resources and protecting our ability to really have the earth absorb water in the northern part of the state. and provide that not only to the north, but to other parts of the state as well. So these areas of excellence really matter, and thank you for highlighting them.
Thank you. We appreciate the support you've given us in doing and pursuing these endeavors.
So as a segue, I'm going to ask that Jason address we have Jason Wilder with us, who's the VP of Research for NAU via Zoom. And Jason, can you address the question that we had earlier regarding NAU's specific expertise in the area of water?
Absolutely. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. So I think this complements Provost Pugliesi's description of NEI resources quite well. When I think about our expertise in the area of water, there are two main areas that I identify at NAU. First, related to watershed health, which is directly related to our interest in catastrophic wildfire, ecological restoration, and forest health. I think as the general public in Arizona is increasingly aware, one of the major impacts of wildfire is the subsequent flooding that occurs afterward, which causes massive environmental damage to communities, and that damage can be ongoing for years afterward. So we've recently hired in the School of Forestry a new faculty member who has expertise in watershed health that complements the existing strengths that already existed. And that was in part leveraged off of both NEI and TRIF funding to bring that faculty member to NAU. So we do have faculty who are interested in the science of that, but also the application of public policy associated with mitigating floodwater disasters after catastrophic wildfires. So in addition to surface water, we also have expertise in our School of Earth and Sustainability in groundwater resources. So particularly with respect to groundwater on the Colorado Plateau, we have scientists who are interested in understanding the sources and distribution of groundwater, and then where it comes and as a result in the springs of northern Arizona. Coupled with that, we do have faculty who are interested in groundwater contamination and the environmental health of groundwater. So those contaminants can be both natural contaminants and man-made contaminants. And those are particularly of interest in northern Arizona in the tribal communities, but also relate to agricultural uses of water and also municipal uses of water. So both groundwater and watershed management are the two areas I would highlight as our most extensive areas of expertise.
Thank you very much. Any additional questions for NAU? Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And we will move on to ASU.
Thank you. So Dr. Martin's coming up to the table. Let me just make more comments prior to her specific update. First, the New Economy Initiative has genetic antecedents in a 10-year effort coming out of Maricopa County to think about how to build the businesses and the economy that are ahead of where we presently are. There was the Maricopa Business Plan. There was a Stanford Research Institute engagement. There was a whole series of things that came out of this. And then the New Economy Initiative, as it has evolved, is then built around the notion of how does Arizona leapfrog beyond its very successful economy at the moment to be the leading edge economy in a whole range of areas, drawing on natural advantages and so forth and so on. And ASU's emphasis here is very much on that. And out of that external set of reports from more than 10 years ago, it said that Arizona State University must build a world-class scaled engineering program, period. They just said that that's absolutely an essential thing. So having said that, a huge part of our New Economy Initiative effort is to build an engineering school the size and power of Jupiter. And what I mean by that is that, you know, this is little planets like Earth and Mercury. I mean, they're just not going to cut it, because look at the way the place evolved in a county the size of Maricopa County, like Los Angeles County. There's many engineering schools in Los Angeles County: USC, UCLA, Cal State, LA, Caltech, other little engineering schools here and there. Well, you know, we didn't do that in Arizona. So it's either size of Jupiter and power of Jupiter, or we can't cut it. And so that's one thing that we're doing. And then the second thing that we're doing is new industry seedlings. So the other thing that these reports said was that we needed to lay down the track for new science-driven industries that don't exactly exist yet or haven't fully emerged yet. And so we've gone a little punch drunk, and so we have funding from the New Economy Initiative to launch some, and now we're pouring in money of our own to launch others, and so we're getting a bunch of these going, and Dr. Morton will bring us up to speed on that. And one of those is water at the end of the day also, which is a key strength, as you noted earlier. So our 3 areas of strength in water are policy design, which is the most difficult that you can imagine. How do you actually make the decisions about the allocation of water? Decision making, and I mean technical decision making from the farm or the ranch level to the city level to the town level to the county level to the region level to the Colorado River Basin level. So decision making, and then new innovations. And some of you may not have read that we received 2 increments of seed funding just in the last few weeks. Within the last 24 hours, the governor announced a $40 million investment in an Arizona water innovation initiative at ASU, working with others. And then we also received an unsolicited grant of $5 million from the Piper Charitable Trust a couple of months ago on things related to water. So we're taking those $45 million, matching those up with other resources that we have. And then that's one of our science and technology center areas of emphasis. And I'll also say that finally, after years of attempts, we did hire we think the most significant water scientist in California, Jay Famiglietti from the University of California, who will be joining our faculty in January as a leader of ours. And so he's coming in from the NASA University of California front. So with that, Dr. Morton will bring us up to speed on how we're doing with the New Economy Initiative. Size and power of Jupiter, just remember that.
Thank you, President Crow. And I'm joined by my colleague, Morgan Olson, there on the screen, the CFO of ASU. Thanks, Morgan, for joining us. I think I have a presentation. Thank you. And just to finish the water conversation, because President Crow alluded to it, I think a major strength of ASU's, as he said, is about decision-making. We can have technology, we can present it, but if it then isn't implemented and taken under advisement, it does no good. And that's not just a technical thing, working with companies, which is what ASU does so well. That new Innovation Institute has TSMC as well as Intel as partners in it. We need them to implement that water policy as well, and we need to convince people to do it as well. And that's one of the things that ASU does so well, that confluence of working with our communities and industry partners. So let me start. I've been asked to tell you about our accomplishments so far in the NEI over the last year and a half and our plans, particularly for FY24 and beyond. I'm not quite sure how to make this. There we go. So as President Crow said, our request for FY24 falls into, there's the Jupiter building in the first line there, growing the Fulton Schools of Engineering, continued evolution of science and technology centers, and I'll say a little bit more about what they are. Again, we can have these technologies, but if people aren't trained to take on these high-tech jobs, including not just the regular students that we're producing, but also people already in the workforce. So we're putting a lot of effort into upskilling and reskilling. And then, as he said, supporting startups and companies to come here to Arizona and grow and hire our folks as well.
Just two related comments. So first, on the New Economy Initiative, we're not spending only the money allocated by the legislature in the New Economy Initiative. We're also gathering other resources, building other buildings, advancing other things, making things happen. And since you've asked in the past about the mysterious Maria Anguiano, Executive Vice President for ASU Learning Enterprise, she's got a chunk of this also, which was that third category, if you just go back one slide. So she's working on something which is related to career, upskilling, getting people ready for the workforce from wherever they happen to be, that is taking advantage of all of the talent. And so just wanted to point out, Sally, you weren't aware that they were inquiring about the mysterious Maria Anguiano.
Sure, and actually you see her there in the third bullet from the bottom, launched Career Catalyst. This is a series of upskilling courses, short courses. For example, we've partnered with Google to produce courses on how to become a sustainability analyst, which might should include water training. So we've launched 5 science and technology centers in the last year and a half. These are really the intellectual hubs of the New Economy Initiative for ASU. They are communities
of faculty, students, and staff, and most importantly, industry partners. We've had 2 proposer days so far. We've had close to 350 individuals come, over 90 companies come to ASU to understand how they can interact with those science and technology centers.
So 90 companies is unbelievable. That means that they're showing up to be a part of launching these things, to launch these seedling companies, these seedling industries.
Right, and they co-fund projects with us. For example, one of the co-funded projects was working with 2D semiconductors on wafer scale manufacturing of incredibly thin semiconductors. The first 2 science and technology centers we launched were in energy, materials, and devices, and the second was on advanced manufacturing. We specifically chose those 2 because of all the energy and focus on semiconductors and microelectronics in the Valley. The latter 3 that we have launched are on advanced communications, particularly in the defense area, extreme environments with water as one of the thrusts, and human performance are the 5 that have been launched so far. We've created an industry council, which has members like Intel, TSMC, Microchips, Applied Materials. People are coming to us and saying, how can we be part of this initiative at ASU and within the state more broadly?
And former Regent Rick Myers is our
He's
helper.
our convener.
He's making things happen. So.
And it's important, not just they're coming to us, but we're learning from them. We're asking them, what do you need? Workforce is on everybody's minds. This is what they're most concerned about. So we're talking with them, how are our courses meeting your needs? What short courses should be available? It's a very dynamic dialogue. We're also enhancing our research facilities. As many of you know, we have the Macro Technology Works, which is at the Research Park, one of the 6 innovation zones at ASU. It is an old Motorola plant. Just in the last 6 months, we've had Secretary Raimondo of the Department of Commerce, as well as Undersecretary of Defense Heidi Shue visit, as well as our senators and representatives. They are coming to see that ecosystem that's being built there. This will really put Arizona as well as ASU right at the forefront of microelectronics work. We're setting this stage partially for the CHIPS funding that is very much coming to the forefront. As you may know, $2 billion is at the Department of Defense, will be targeted toward the microelectronics network, or Commons as it's called. It goes by the acronym NNERD, the National Network of Electronics Research and Development.
There is humor.
There's a very apt acronym.
On purpose.
We really are solidifying Arizona and ASU as a microelectronics leader.
In fact, Undersecretary Heidi Shue, when she came, she said she'd never seen it. This is what they had imagined that they wanted to do, and they weren't really fully aware of how one would do it. And when she saw it, she said, this is it. And we're like, well, then, yeah, you need to give us a lot of money here.
And just to give you,
Yes.
just to give you some idea of the growth at Fulton Schools of Engineering, which was at just close to 27,000 enrolled students in academic year 21, we've grown to over 30,000 students in academic year 22. And I think we're very much on track to even exceed the 40,000 graduates, which was part of our original New Economy Initiative plan. So what do we plan to do in FY24? We're going to enhance our collaborative opportunities, increase those co-funded projects, increase our skilled graduates from Fulton, as I said, amplify our research facilities. We will launch that's just more amplification of what we've already done in fiscal 22 and 23. What will be new? We're already launching 2 additional science and technology centers, one in learning engineering. This is how do we learn about the way that we learn. We have an incredible set of data at ASU with so many students. Can we think about, for example, a student taking calculus? Could we tell an incoming student, you would be best in an in-person class, or perhaps you would learn best in a hybrid class or online? We have the data to be able to examine a question like that. And that's what the learning engineering.
There's a chance, because this is an unoccupied space, that all the tools for learning engineering, like the ones we're building for the Dreamscape Learn initiative that some of you have seen, the industry itself, there's still a place that Phoenix could become the epicenter of that. We could become the place where these learning engineering tools are designed, developed, built, tested, and so forth. So that's why we went ahead and found some extra resources to launch this with.
right? And we're really enabling ourselves to compete for the federal really mega opportunities that are available, not just in CHIPS plus science. We are bidding for Hydrogen Hub, which my colleague, Dr. Cantwell, alluded to, led out of ASU. So we are positioning Arizona to be a leader here. What do we plan
I just
to?
want to comment for the region's benefit, Sally, on the sustainability. So sustainability is not this greenwash, hogwash, bunch of stuff about a bunch of environmental wackos hanging out at the universities, trying to figure out, how we can all sound like we're sustainable. There's unbelievable economic opportunity in the building of the tools under which we manage our way through climate change, climate adjustment, water adjustment. There's just huge economic opportunity. And we hired a fantastic woman as the head of our School of Sustainability, Diane Pataki from the University of Utah. And so she's come down and she's going to take the lead on making this happen also. So we just think that's another initiative for us in these now 7 science and technology centers.
So I think a lot about how to make this work. That's my job from President Crow. I think the fact that we have this efficient and really effective science and technology center model, we know how this works now. We know how to do the proposers day. We know how to involve faculty and industry. It's set up now. We can replicate that. We want to be ready. Could I tell you what the science and technology centers are going to be in the coming year? Well, I've told you too, but I don't know what else might surface. We want to be able to nimbly, quickly, effectively respond to opportunities. And I think the New Economy Initiative allows us to do that. I see an incredible excitement among the industry community with respect to the NEI at ASU. And we've seen that with the numbers of industry that are partners that are coming to us and getting
So
involved.
an example of a company in sustainability would be Footprint, which is now headquartered here, grew out of Intel, an unbelievable material sciences oriented company producing advanced materials that just, you buy all your stuff and it just goes away at some point. I mean, it's just a completely new way of doing things. And so that's an example of the kinds of companies that we're working with.
Right. So I think I'll close there and entertain questions. Thank you.
Thanks. Any questions for ASU?
I'll add one other point. So $1 billion of new base funding was just added to the National Science Foundation. $10 billion of additional authority was added to without funding yet, but authority to the National Science Foundation. $2 billion for the new NNERD coming out of the Defense Department. Probably more than that in just terms of other research that's advancing. New ways of working with companies, new companies that we're working with. We see this as a massive acceleration, not only of the outcomes, but of the evolution of the university itself to be a greater assembler of research capabilities, which then attracts industry. So all of the literature says that the more intense the research industry, the research university, the more intense the research university, the more significant the cluster of companies and others that want to be around it. Even not in the specific areas, just to be around it, just because of what it does. Yeah.
Okay. Other questions? I think we got the water question answered right up front. Anything else? Thank you very much. So we are going to take a 15-minute break. We will come back at, 3:50 and resume our agenda.
Madam Chair.
Welcome back, everybody. For our next item, the board is asked to approve payment for achievement of 2021-2022 at-risk compensation goals assigned to the president's executive director and the EEC, and approve proposed amendments to the president's contracts and the notice of appointment for executive director Arnold. Jennifer Pollock is here to present.
Thank you, Regent Manson. Regent Manson, members of the board. Each year, the board conducts.
Your microphone is not on either.
Nope,
There you
it's
go.
not. Is it on now?
Yep.
Okay. I'll try this again. Chair Manson, members of the board. Each year, the board conducts annual performance reviews of the presidents and the executive director. And as a result of that process, the board may consider amendments to the president's contracts and the executive director's notice of appointment, achievement of at-risk compensation goals previously assigned, and assignment of goals for future at-risk compensation. In your materials, you have an executive summary that lists the proposed achievement of the 2021-22 at-risk compensation goals for the presidents, the executive director, and the enterprise executive committee. The executive summary also sets forth amendments to the contracts of the presidents and the notice of appointment for the executive director, as well as assignment of future at-risk compensation goals. If this item is approved, the president's contracts and the notice of appointment for the executive director will be restated to include the amendments included in the materials, as well as making any kind of technical and conforming changes that would be needed to update some outdated language in the contracts and to make those provisions consistent. So with this item, the board office asks the board to approve payment for achievement of the 2021-22 at-risk compensation goals assigned to the presidents, the executive director, and the EEC. Approve proposed amendments to the president's contracts and the notice of appointment for the executive director. Assign new at-risk compensation goals, and authorize the board chair to amend, restate, and make any necessary technical and conforming changes to the contracts for the presidents and the notice of appointment for the executive director, as further described in the executive summary and discussed here. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions from board members? Seeing none, I move that the board approve payment for achievement of 2021-2022 at-risk compensation goals assigned to the presidents, the executive director, and the EEC. Approve the proposed amendments to the president's contracts and the notice of appointment for executive director. Assign new at-risk compensation goals and authorize the board chair to amend, restate, and make any necessary technical or conforming changes to the contracts for the presidents and the notice of appointment for the executive director as described in the executive summary and in the presentation. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion does carry. Thank you very much. We're now going to move on to the business of the Academic Affairs and Educational Attainment Committee, and Regent Duval, as committee chair, could you please present items 5 and 6?
I can, Madam Chair, and I'm almost as pleased to do so as I was NICD. We have one item today from the Academic Affairs and Educational Attainment Committee. The board will review Arizona State University's request to appoint 4 Regents professors. But before we take up this item, I'd like to give the board a report on the November 3rd, 2022 Academic Affairs and Educational Attainment Committee. The committee reviewed and approved forwarding to the full board Northern Arizona University's revised general education program framework. The provost explained in detail the revisions to the general education program, and the revisions address the board's concerns and reaffirm the board's and the university's commitment to American history and civics. I also want to personally thank the provost and her team and Lori and the rest. This obviously involved a lot of stakeholders, a lot of work, a lot of late nights, a lot of annoying calls from me and Mr. President. Your team was responsive and demonstrated enormous diplomatic skill, as well as keeping their eye on the strategic objective. And I was very impressed with the entire process and want to thank them. NAU is scheduled to bring the general election crosswalk back in the future. The general election crosswalk is intended to ensure alignment between the board's general election crosswalk, the adopted general election framework, and the general education courses offered. The University of Arizona is scheduled to present their crosswalk at the January committee meeting. Also, as part of the board's general education revamp, the universities were tasked with developing assessments in writing, quantitative reasoning, math, critical thinking, and civics. It's worth noting that this effort to assess student outcomes of general education is not done anywhere else in the country, and Arizona is the first mover in this area. The first of those assessments is complete, and the committee engaged in a tri-university discussion on general education written assessment outcomes. It was a robust discussion, and the work group will incorporate Regents' comments and questions regarding the assessment scoring into their future assessment work. The universities are already incorporating what they may have learned from this written assessment into improving the writing instruction. The universities are scheduled to present the results of the quantitative reasoning assessment next fall. In addition to general education, the committee spent time on NAU's metrics. NAU presented its proposed institutional metrics. Based on the committee's discussion, NAU will decrease the number of proposed metrics and present a smaller list of institutional metrics for the committee's final review in January. We then proceeded with NAU to discuss its enterprise-wide
metric target and forecast measures. As part of the discussion, Regents requested a better understanding of the business and financial plan underwriting the metric targets that were proposed. Staff will work with NAU to propose a timeline and details around understanding the business and financial plan underwriting NAU's strategic roadmap and accompanying institutional and enterprise metrics targets. The committee also forwarded for board review and approval 2 policies around the Regents Distinguished President Award Policy and the Arizona Teacher Student Loan Program. Finally, the committee discussed but did not act on ASU's request for 6 new academic organizational unit requests and 17 new academic programs with a focus on the West Campus. There has been much discussion about this, and Madam Chair, it is our hope that we will be able to take this up either in a special board meeting in December or as soon as possible, as soon as the board is ready to do so, but hopefully as soon as possible. There are a number of consent agenda items that have been forwarded to the full board, which are on your consent agenda. The 2022 annual report on articulation and transfer for Arizona post-secondary education, and a new academic organizational unit for NAU, and a request for new academic programs for UA Arizona. We will now move to Arizona State University's request for appointment of Regents professors. This is item number 6. The Arizona State University asked the board to approve their request for appointment of 4 Regents professors. Yes, good. Provost Gonzalez is about to join us, and she will provide the overview of our 4 new rock stars.
Very
I just want to add something first. So just for Regents, just as a sort of reminder, so Regents professors is the highest attained academic rank in the institution. It's limited by you all to 3% or less of the professoriate at the institution. It's a huge honor. It's very, very important to us, and it's our faculty who are bar none as good as anyone in their space that exists. And obviously not everyone that's even at that level can get it, only a handful of people. So Provost Gonzalez.
Excellent. Very happy to present to you 4 stellar faculty for the distinction of Regents Professor. We have 4 this year because really the records were so outstanding and they cut across very diverse fields. So I'll start with Stacy Leeds. Stacy Leeds is a Sandra Day O'Connor College of Law faculty member, a foundation professor of law and leadership. She served on judiciaries of 10 tribal nations. She has served on several institutions within the Department of the Interior and the National Judicial College. She is considered one of the most important figures in the world of Indian law and policy. She is a frequent contributor to Native American law publications, a regular panelist and guest speaker at Indian law events around the globe, and has delivered more than 20 keynote or distinguished addresses. Leeds was the first Indigenous woman in the United States to serve as a law school dean at the University of Arkansas School of Law from 2011 to 2018. And you may have seen the announcement that she has just been appointed as our new dean of the law school.
And these are unrelated.
Unrelated.
Correlated, so it just happened at the same time. So.
The next one is Juan Liu, a professor of computer science and engineering with the School of Computing and Augmented Intelligence in the Ira A. Fulton Schools of Engineering. He is a fellow in the Association for the Advancement of Artificial Intelligence, the Association for Computing Machinery, and the American Association for the Advancement of Science, and in 2014 received the ASU's President's Award for Innovation. He is widely regarded as a pioneer in AI research who is exceptionally broad-based relative to most other AI researchers. He focuses on developing computational methods for data mining, machine learning, and social computing. Michael Lynch is a professor in the School of Life Sciences and the director of the Biodesign Center for Mechanisms of Evolution. He was elected as a fellow of the American Association for the Advancement of Sciences in 2019, and he received several Lifetime Achievement Awards for his work in genetics and molecular biology. Lynch's research focuses on uncovering the mechanisms driving evolution at the genomic, cellular, and organismic levels. In recognition of his high impact on the field of evolutionary biology, he has received grants from the National Institutes of Health, the National Institute of Aging, National Science Foundation, and the U.S. Department of the Army. And he has been hailed as the world's leading quantitative geneticist. His 1998 book, Genetics and Analysis of Quantitative Traits, has received nearly 10,000 citations, and he is considered the foundational work in quantitative genetics. Finally, last but not least, Alexandra Navratsky, a professor in the School of Molecular Sciences and the School for Engineering of Matter, Transport, and Energy. She's also director of the Navratsky Eyring Center for the Materials of the Universe. She is also the first female faculty member from Princeton University to be elected to the U.S. National Academy of Sciences, and was the first woman to receive the Harry H.S. Medal. Interesting story about Alex is she actually started her career at ASU as an assistant professor, then went to Princeton, and then went to UC Davis, and we hired her back.
And you don't. I mean, she just won a huge, massive center. She is unbelievable. I think Nancy and I get most of our email messages from Alex.
She is a force of nature. Yeah. Yeah. So Alex recently won the American Ceramic Society. The American Ceramic Society recently established the Navratsky Award for Experimental Thermodynamics of Solids, named after her.
So the medal's named for her.
Wow.
It is considered one of the highest bestowed upon a scientist to have this a medal named after her. So outstanding faculty.
So how do we tell our Regents professors that they've been selected?
So that's fun. They get called to the principal's office. They get called to Michael's office, and the entire executive committee is there, and they don't know why they're there. They just come walking in the door. And Michael makes the announcement, and we have big posters up with them, and they're sort of just, they're not quite sure what to say at first, but then we engage them in a wonderful interchange. It's a lot of fun.
And some of them will even complain when they come.
You're taking me away from my research.
No, I'm not getting what I need for my lab, or since I have you in the room.
Well, I think I've detected a theme. I refer to them as the rock stars. You referred to them as forces of nature. Michael referred to them as best in their respective space. And this is, of course, all in service of planet, whatever it was, Pluto or Jupiter today. So I think there's a theme emerging.
They're never quite sure Pluto is a planet. So we're definitely not building Pluto.
Right.
Yes.
So with enthusiasm, I ask, is there a motion to approve Arizona State University's request for appointment of Regents professors?
So
Moved, second.
Second.
All those in favor signify with an eye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Congratulations. Thank you, Provost. This concludes the Academic Affairs and Educational Attainment Committee portion of the agenda, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Regent Duval. We now move on to the next item, which is the report on the Finance, Capital, and Resources Committee. And Regent Mata will provide the report.
Thank you, Chair Manson. The Finance, Capital, and Resources Committee agenda includes item 7 as well as items 19 through 26, which were approved on the consent agenda earlier today. For item number 7, I will give a report on the Finance, Capital, and Resources Committee meeting that was held on November 3rd. At this meeting, the committee discussed the following items, which were already voted as part of today's consent agenda. The policy part was the committee first read proposed revisions to the tuition setting policies. IT project, the committee reviewed ASU request to replace its HR system with human capital management system. It's a system with a technology they require to have to be able to work with multiple state site and also international sites. Construction projects, the committee reviewed 4 individual construction projects that were included in ASU annual capital plan from the September meeting. At the November 3rd committee meeting, we also discussed the fiscal year 2023 fall financial status report, and we received a presentation in the process for how university issued them. That was a good training and refresh for all of us. So both of these items do not require committee action. In addition, 2 items were included on today's consent agenda that the committee discussed on the September meeting. One of these items is a second reading of proposed revisions to the commercial in nature definition in the capital policies. The other item is the NAU sublease with kind hospitality at the Skybridge, Arizona in Mesa. This concludes the report for the Finance, Capital, and Resources Committee. Are there any questions?
Seeing none. Thank
Seeing
you,
none.
Regent Mata.
Thank you, Chair Manso. This item is for information only, and this concludes the Finance, Capital, and Resources Committee agenda. Thank you.
We will now move on to the next report, which is the Research and Health Sciences Committee. And Regent Brewster, can you give us that report, please?
Thank you, Chair Manson, and thank you to the committee members and certainly the Board of Regents staff. I would like to give the report on our November 3rd meeting, Research and Health Sciences Committee. We began the meeting by recommending that the board approve the fiscal year 2023 through 2025 TRIF 3-year budget. We will need to take up a revised budget in the new year to allocate among the universities the projected $34.5 million worth of TRIF revenue. The committee then recommends that the board approve the fiscal year 2023 Regents Research Grants. This year's funding is going to projects to help reduce cancer in Arizona firefighters and support research to resolve Arizona problems in partnership with the Arizona Department of Forestry and Fire Management and the Arizona Department of Water Resources. We also received a preview from the board office on the TRIF-supported Regents Community Grants. We will receive Regents Community Grant proposals beginning in January. The final item was a request to recommend to the full board the acceptance of the Nurse Education Investment Pilot Program monies from DHS for distribution to Arizona's public universities. Chair Manson, that concludes our committee report.
Thank you, Regent Brewster. Any questions? Okay. We'll now move on to the Student Regent report. Regent Conyer and Regent Reese.
Thank you, Regent Manson. Okay, I think it's on. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for a productive and insightful day, and thank you to the University of Arizona staff for hosting us. From the student side, Rachel and I wanted to share a few highlights and updates. Firstly, we want to recognize University of Arizona Student Body President Patrick Robles, who spoke earlier. Patrick recently traveled to Washington, D.C. to advocate for student rights and was recognized by the United States Vice President and the White House. We want to congratulate him on his achievements. Additionally, on the theme of student government representation, we wanted to recognize ASU's efforts to engage the growing population of online students in student government. Recently, ASU's student government shared that online students will now be able to hold student government leadership positions. Online students are such an important part of our community, and I look forward to seeing their contributions and engagement. Now I will pass it on to Rachel to share further updates.
Thank you, Regent Reese, Regent Manson. Continuing to highlight the excellent work being done by student leadership, as mentioned by ASNAU President Brendan Traxel earlier, beginning in January of 2023, Northern Arizona University has approved an increase in student minimum wage to $15 per hour, as recommended by the University Budget Advisory Board. And we see this as a key step in improving student well-being by decreasing financial stress for student employees on campus. So we commend their efforts to bolster other initiatives to support student need on campus and look forward to continued collaboration. Furthermore, over the past month, both Regent Reese and I have had the opportunity to attend a variety of meetings with student government leadership, as well as ABOR staff, to discuss proposed changes to the tuition setting structure. In addition to assuring that elected student officials will continue to be involved in the tuition setting process, it has been incredibly beneficial to receive input from these leaders. The unique perspective from each university is pivotal in determining a policy which is most beneficial to a wide variety of students who are pursuing a degree in the state of Arizona. Thank you to our student leaders for being in attendance at today's meeting and for continuing to provide valuable input. We appreciate your service to students. And with that being said, this concludes our Student Regent report.
Thank you very much. Our final item on the agenda today is the report from the Arizona Faculty's Council, and Professor Dolan, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I think this is on. All right. Okay. Dear regents, presidents, and guests, in these inflationary times, we acknowledge the increase in faculty compensation as a very welcome action. It brings a certain number of salaries more in line with market rates, and the actual cost of living. However, the problems of inversion and compression, as well as undercompensation of career track faculty, have grown over a number of years and remain serious issues. While each university must devise its own strategy based on its own circumstances, we encourage the university presidents and the board to provide guidance on matters of equity. We appreciate that ABOR will continue to press the legislature for additional funding to balance these inequities as you have in the past. Our nation is in an era of heightened tensions and conflict, and this has affected universities as well. Of course, the worst instance is the recent murder of a UA professor, Tom Mexner, and we trust that each university is carefully considering its security procedures. But other problems must also be addressed. The rise of hateful speech and actions pose serious challenges for the sense of well-being of all university communities, as well as difficulties in preserving free speech. Classroom disruptions ranging from hostile behavior to intrusions by persons not enrolled in the class further threaten our teaching and learning missions. We are committed to promoting civil discourse in our classrooms and among our students. We appreciate your emphasis within our new Gen Ed framework on civil discourse. Of critical importance is the fact that incoming numbers of Arizona freshmen are decreasing and overall numbers of student degree completion is going down. According to the recent post-secondary performance report by ABOR, Arizona continues to lag the national average in the number of residents with a bachelor degree, end quote. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, only 30% of Arizonans have obtained at least a bachelor's degree. It is challenging for citizens lacking in critical inquiry skills and the ability to understand many of the advancements and trajectories of our society. And so they face a daunting path to being productive members of our society. In addition, our Arizona workforce needs many more educated people for a productive and more economically successful future. Our faculty are committed to increasing the number of Arizona students choosing to attend our universities. One of the most pressing challenges we face is managing the repercussions from the past few COVID-impacted years. It has hindered the academic readiness we expect from incoming students. Students graduating from high school have missed out on crucial educational experiences, and some have struggled in their university classes. We find here, as in the rest of the country, a drop in preparedness, especially in math and science. Our current students are also evidencing anxiety and stress at levels not experienced prior to 2020. We, the faculty and leadership at the universities, are doing everything we can to support them. We are concerned that this may affect how our metrics are evaluated and hope that the regents are understanding during the transition to a more stable educational environment. Thank you for your ongoing support and partnership to improve the educational outcomes of all of our students and the enhancement of our engagement with Arizona. Thank you, regents, presidents, and guests.
Thank you, Professor Dolan. This concludes today's agenda. I have a few announcements before we adjourn. There is a reception at the Bear Down Gym at 5:30 this evening. There will be cart service. I don't know whether it will come from here or from the hotel. Or you can walk if you have walking shoes on. The faculty breakfast is scheduled for tomorrow morning at 7:45 in Old Main in the Silver and Sage room. I'm assuming that all regents, Old Main is that way, that door. Yes. Following the faculty breakfast, we are scheduled to reconvene in executive session at 9 a.m. in the Tucson room for reviews of assignments with President Cruz Rivera and President Robbins and other items on the executive session agenda. I'd like to thank President Robbins, his staff, Director Arnold, and the board staff for all of their work to put this meeting together, and thank all of you for attending. I think we had a great discussion today, and the board is now in recess.